Hi, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Diva Spills, where I'll be recapping and reviewing TV shows and movies of the past and present. Welcome back! If you're new here, I do recommend that you watch the previous video where I covered season 1 of Teen Wolf because we'll be sipping tea about season 2 today. Speaking of which, I do recommend that you grab a beverage, whether hot, cold, or lukewarm. And today, finally, in the second video, I have prepared tea. I have my little grey IKEA mug here. I actually have a little bag of oolong tea that my friend got for me while she was visiting China. I'm gonna pop that into my mug that currently has hot water in it. It's gonna take a while to steep, I'm guessing. Anyway, you can stay tuned on updates on either Instagram or TikTok at Diva Spills, and this will be available to watch or listen to on Spotify and YouTube. A quick disclaimer before we dive in, I'm by no means verified to be a critic. These are just my opinions and they are in no way affiliated with anyone or anything. With that, let's sip tea about season 2 today. So season 2 episode 1 starts with a half-naked Jackson wading out of a lake, I want to say, and we can see that he successfully managed to get that bite from Derek, which is where we left off at the end of season 1. Scott seems to be handling the whole wolf thing pretty well. He's running around on all fours as a human, and I gotta say, it is quite hilarious because the silhouette just kills me. Can't he just run normally? Would he not still have the same speed? Especially since he's running around like that in a residential area. Lest he forget that his girlfriend's dad is a hunter. Here's the tea. So Scott has a little bit of a flashback, if you will. Chris actually caught Scott and Allison, making out and stuff in a car, and he pulled Scott out and threatened to shoot him. The only reason he let Scott go is because Allison begged him and said that she would stay away from Scott. So they're not supposed to be seeing each other, but as we've seen in season 1 of Teen Wolf, the two lovers just can't stay away from each other. So that residential area that he was running about was actually the Argent's neighborhood, so he snuck into Allison's bedroom at night while her parents were out. Lydia is doing okay. She's awake. She's in the hospital still. And Styles was actually there all weekend for her. He goes to a vending machine which he fights with and breaks. When Lydia goes to take a bath, she has something like a vision or hallucination of black water rising up to her ankles. So she reaches down and she feels for something at the bottom of the tub, and she starts pulling out bunches and bunches and bunches of hair until a bloody arm rises up, pulls her in through the arm, and she lets out a loud piercing scream. Everyone hears this, and Styles, Lydia's dad, Melissa, her nurse, runs in, and they see that her hospital room and the bathroom, it's empty. Lydia's gone out the window. Lydia's scream actually echoes all over Beacon Hills, and Scott can hear it. Naturally, the sheriff is called, but Styles sneaks out Lydia's nightgown to Scott, who's waiting in the jeep, so that he can go look for her. Allison shows up because she wants to help find her friend, right? And she tells the boys that Chris and the hunters are actually out looking for her as well. In the next scene, we see a boy who is digging the iconic Kate Argent's grave, and he has a black eye. While he's digging in an excavator, he hears some sounds. He gets pushed over into Kate's grave that he was digging by something immensely strong. From what this boy could see, the creature that knocked him down was digging someone else's grave for something. So he crouches back into the grave because, like, what the hell is that? And then Derek appears and asks if he needs some help. Our three besties, Allison, Scott, and Styles, somehow end up at Hale House. Styles triggers a tripwire that causes a rope to hang Scott upside down. It's an urgent trap. Before Allison and Styles can help him, Scott could smell that Chris and some hunters were coming. So he urges Styles and Allison to go hide. Chris appears and he knows that Scott is looking for Lydia as well. He threatens Scott in his usual manner before he leaves him there. We do see that Scott is a lot more comfortable and confident with who he is now, but maybe it's because nothing has really happened yet. The sheriff ends up at the graveyard around dawn and he talks to the boy with the black eye who saw that creature digging up whatever, and he's next to his father. The boy's name is Isaac Leahy. The dad is an absolute dick. And the sheriff actually asks Isaac about his black eye. Isaac gives the excuse that it was from practice because he's on the lacrosse team at school. And we find out that the creature that was digging up another grave from the night before took the corpse's liver. Here's the thing. We're like, what, 10-15 minutes into the first episode? I just gotta say, how is it that the canine unit managed to bring the sheriff and his team to the graveyard, right? Scott, our resident wolf with very, very, very enhanced abilities, ended up at Hill House. Like, why didn't they go to the graveyard as well? It's just a bit odd. Like, why was one search party, right, made up of 3 besties, why did they end up at Hill House? And where did they go after that? Did they even find anything at Hill House? We see nothing after Scott gets, that whole trap thing and he talks to Chris. That's it. We do not see anything else. We do not know anything else. So what was Scott doing the whole night? Anyway, Styles finds out all this information from the sheriff, of course, and he tells Scott about it in school. They think that the creature that was digging up the graveyard is probably Lydia. Again, how a canine unit trained dog, which by the way, I'm living, love dogs, of course. So you go, boo. But like, Scott, what the hell? Jackson is in school like normal, and in the lacrosse changing room, Coach Finstop, he basically bribes the lacrosse team to join the search party for Lydia after school with the promise of getting automatic A's for all his classes. Classes? How many classes does he teach? He teaches lacrosse, and we know from season 1 that he teaches economics as well. Are there more? This man really be doing the most, and he seems so passionate about finding Lydia. Jackson doesn't want to help, and he doesn't seem to care either, of course. Typical Jackson. In class, his nose actually starts to bleed black blood, so he runs into the washroom and he goes into a stall instead of sink. He's like desperately pulling out rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls of toilet paper, trying to stop the bleeding, but it's not working. Derek, just as it was in season 1, is somehow able to waltz through the school like it's his own home, pulls Jackson out of the stall, and he's asking Jackson, what hell's going on? Jackson pretends that everything is okay, but then he starts to bleed from his ears, and it's the same black blood, and Derek obviously sees this, pointing out the obvious to him, and we learn that Jackson's body is rejecting the bite, but he doesn't know why. And instead of being of any help, he just looks at Jackson like he got the ick, and he disappears. Scott leaves a dress and a note in Allison's locker, and someone next to her locker, I'm just gonna call him camera guy because he's holding a camera, compliments the dress. I don't know how he saw it because even we as the audience couldn't see what the hell the dress was. So the fact that they showed this interaction probably means that this camera guy is gonna show up again. So some girls were standing behind Allison, talk shit about her right to her face, literally. They were talking about the fact that she's like a murderous niece, right? Kate, how dare you call Kate a murderer? Well, she is, but Scott can hear all this, of course, because he was watching Allison receive her gift. So he pulls her into a classroom and he reassures her. Quite sweet actually, and he gave some pretty sound advice too. He said that he would be near Allison during Kate's funeral, even though he can't actually be there, but he'll be somewhere around. At Kate's funeral, there's only the Argents and I'm guessing some of the hunters. So when Chris, Victoria, and Allison walk in, they're flooded by cameras, right? The sheriff is the one who has to escort them. There's barricades, everything. And camera guy who we just talked about, complimenting Allison's dress or whatever, he's there and he's taking very close-up shots of Allison's face. So I guess this is the kind of character that he's gonna be and that we're gonna see in season 2. But his camera gets taken away by an old man who crushes the SD card. Chris introduces this old man as Gerard. Scott and Styles are somewhere in the graveyard watching from afar. Gerard is actually Gerard Argent, Chris's father, who he is apparently on a first name base with Allison's grandfather, who she does not know at all. And apparently, Chris and Victoria did not want to have such a funeral for Kate because it is quite a publicized thing, especially in a small town like Beacon Hills. But Gerard is the one who wanted the funeral for his daughter, right? It's Kate. Scott and Styles get busted by the sheriff. I do love the sheriff actually, but they get reprimanded. They're stuck in the back of the sheriff's car when Noah actually gets a call that there's been an attack on an ambulance that was carrying a heart attack victim. There's blood everywhere. The deputy has never seen anything like this before, right? And when the sheriff turns back to tell the boys to wait here, they're gone. Of course, they've already gone. I thought that cop cars, like you're not able to open the back seat from the inside, right? Like there's a child lock on or something. I've obviously never been inside a cop car and neither do I plan on being inside one, but that's the general knowledge that I have. Is this false information that I have created for myself? I don't know. The boys obviously think that it's Lydia who is still running rampant, so they go to the ambulance. It's nighttime now. When they get there, they do see that it's quite a bloody scene. Scott catches a scent and he runs after it through the woods. Meanwhile, Styles obviously gets busted by the sheriff again when a shaking, naked Lydia shows up out of nowhere. She's fine. She's conscious. Of course, there's, some dirt and leaves and all that. But overall, she looks pretty okay. So that scent that Scott was chasing was actually another werewolf. And he gets caught in one of the Argent traps. Derek appears out of nowhere and he pushes Scott to the side and tells him that they have to hide. They're too late because the hunters show up. In addition to Chris Argent, we've got Gerard as well. He's probably like the godfather at this point, right? He looks that way too. He's like the grandfather of hunting, like the Don. Chris and Gerard torture this random werewolf guy, and he admits that he came to Beacon Hills looking for the alpha, Derek, right, who is now the new alpha, and he swears that he never hurt anyone who was alive, that the guy in the ambulance was already dead. Was not a full moon, so he doesn't really say why he attacked the guy in the ambulance. I hope it wasn't to eat him or anything, right? Derek explains to Scott and us in the process that this guy, this werewolf guy, he is a lone wolf. He's an omega. That's what they call it. He's an omega either out of free will or maybe he was exiled from his pack or, everyone else got murdered. Gerard does a power move. He cuts the guy in half and Chris reminds him of the code. But Gerard says that the code is no more since they murdered Kate, like father, like daughter. And he makes a statement declaring war on the werewolves. In episode 2, Isaac, remember Isaac, the kid with the black eye at the graveyard? Yeah, he and his dad are having dinner in the house. So Isaac's gonna be a recurring character now. And he's afraid to tell his dad about his grades for one particular subject. Because everything else he's doing pretty well, except for one where after his dad makes him spit it out, I think he got like a C minus or something. And his dad, it was really nasty to see the scene. He acted like everything was okay and he's not gonna punish Isaac. He just wants Isaac to clean the kitchen or whatever, and then he starts slamming shit onto the ground, flipping the table, throwing glassware at Isaac. So he throws his glass that hits the wall right next to Isaac, but the glass shot cuts his cheek, and we can see that it's a wound, it's bleeding and all that. And Isaac stands up to his father saying that he could have killed him or he could have blinded him. His father doesn't care, obviously, because he's an asshole, and we all see, including his father, that the wound on his cheek heals. I knew that obviously werewolves, that they have this ability to heal, right? But the thing about this scene is that we actually see the blood seep back into the body. I did not know that was how it worked, but I guess it makes sense as to how Derek survived the alpha in episode 6 of season 1 when he got clawed in the back. Isaac freaks out, so he runs out of the house and he cycles away. His dad follows him but in his car, and he's trying to go after Isaac. But he loses sight of Isaac and it starts to rain heavily. In an alleyway, he sees Isaac's bike on the ground. So he steps out and he's calling out for Isaac, trying to get him to come back. And this reptilian looking creature comes out of nowhere and he starts chasing after Isaac's dad. He manages to get into his car, so he's safe right now. Oh, but he's not, because the reptilian creature rips off the door and Isaac's dead. Very well deserved death, I think. Isaac goes to find Derek in some basement warehouse looking type of place, and he tells Derek that he thinks his father is dead. So Derek thought that Isaac's the one who killed his father, right? Because we now obviously know that he's a werewolf. But that's the thing, Isaac says that it's not him. So this reptilian looking creature is not Isaac. Allison sneaks out of her house to meet Scott in the woods at midnight. So how they leave each other messages, because her parents are monitoring her every text call, invading her privacy. So Scott would leave a time on the window of the passenger seat of her car, and when she goes in the car, she would breathe on it to fog it up so that she could see the time. He tries to ask her about Gerard, but it's obvious that she really doesn't know anything. I mean, she can't even remember him. Chris hasn't talked to her about anything since season 1, when she learned about all these werewolves and hunters type of thing. Chris and Victoria, meanwhile, were on a little date night where they kidnapped the school principal and started to torture him, saying that he needs to be replaced because of bad academic performance. Lydia is back in school and she can't remember anything from the 2 days that she was running around the town, right? Allison sticks to her, and of course when they enter the school, everyone just looks at Lydia. Jackson asks the camera guy, who is appearing very frequently, he asks camera guy for a digital camera that he can use to record something all night long. So a full moon is coming up. I think we can guess what Jackson wants the camera for. Also, this request comes right before lacrosse practice. Camera guy is wearing the team's lacrosse uniform, so that means he's in the team too. I feel like every high school male character we're introduced to in Teen Wolf so far have all been on the lacrosse team. Are there no other sports played in the school? Or even a women's team? Speaking of the full moon, Styles tells Scott that he's still gonna lock Scott up because, he doesn't want Scott to go around and accidentally kill people. Scott does say that he feels that he has a better grasp on his new identity now and feels that he's going to be okay during the full moon. He doesn't have that murderous rage that he used to have in the days leading up to the full moon. Remember his mean girl moment in season 1? So they're also at this lacrosse practice, right? Because they're on the team. Like I said, everyone in the school seems to be in the lacrosse team, and Scott is able to smell the scent of another werewolf, but he can't identify who it is because everyone's wearing the same uniform. They've got helmets on, it's hard to identify, right? There's so many people too. So Styles comes up with this idea of Scott playing goalie for a day so that he can try to get a whiff of people. Now, No, Styles is usually the brains of the operation, I will say. But this time, it was a no for me because the plan sucked. As a goalie right now, I don't watch lacrosse, but generally, if you're gonna play sports where you've got a goalkeeper, the goalkeeper is meant to stay within the goal. The rest of the boys, they get into a line and they're supposed to practice shots, right? Scott's the goalie for this practice session. With every boy that runs up, Scott runs out of the goal, tackles the person, and starts smelling them. If they were not trying to be obvious, this just blew it for them. Because what the hell is this kind of plan? The rest of the team are obviously like, what the hell is going on? And the coach is irritated because, huh? It's a real stupid way to get noticed. Because here's the thing, here's a better plan, okay? Let me help you out. Scott is probably still co-captain. While the boys are lining up, he could either walk up and down to get a whiff, talk right to each of them, giving them encouragement or something as co-captain, which allows him to get in the vicinity of the person's face to get a glimpse or to get a smell, right? So they're doing their plan and Jackson notices this. So he tells the coach that his shoulder's not doing so well so that he could sit out of it. I don't know why. I guess it's because the boys don't know that Derek bit Jackson because nobody told them. That's probably why. Then it's Isaac's turn, and obviously Scott figures it out. We can see that Isaac's eyes turn yellow, and right at that moment, the sheriff and some deputies walk across the field calling for Isaac. He's arrested because of his father's murder. But before he gets taken away by the cops, Isaac pleads for Scott not to tell them. Not to tell the cops that he's a werewolf. Obviously, when Isaac is being walked away with the cops, Scott tells Styles that he can sense that murderous rage in Isaac that he had prior to a full moon, and that he's aware that Derek is the one who turned Isaac. Jackson is being questioned by the sheriff in the principal's office because here's the thing. Jackson is actually Isaac's neighbor. He lives opposite him. Jackson knew about the abuse that Isaac was going through. Noah Stilinski, the sheriff, he was pissed as hell. Because why the hell would you not tell anyone about this, right? If you knew this was happening, you should have told the cops. But, of course, it's typical in Jackson's character. He doesn't care. Scott and Styles actually listen in because when they saw that Jackson wasn't in class, they got into some trouble so that Adrian Harris, the chemistry teacher, would send both of them to the principal's office so that they could overhear this conversation, right? When Jackson and the cops leave, they get called in by the new principal because you remember the old principal was kidnapped by the Argent parents? Yeah, new principal is Gerard Argent. Gerard knows who Scott is, as in the fact that he used to date his granddaughter, Allison, and he does say that he will have to send someone for detention. Scott needs to try to stop the whole Isaac thing, right? So Styles, he takes the blame for it and he gets sent to detention. Scott tries to go after Isaac, but he's driven away in the cop car when the sheriff leaves. So Derek shows up after that in his car and tells Scott to get in. Scott suggests that Derek get a lawyer instead for Isaac because he's being detained by the cops, right? What are they supposed to do? But Derek says that if he were to get a lawyer now, this would trigger a quick investigation before the full moon into the Leahy house, where they're gonna find something much worse that would serve as motive for Isaac killing his dad. So Scott gets into the car and agrees to help Derek. Derek brings Scott into Isaac's home and he brings him down to the basement. He tells Scott that Isaac isn't the one that killed his father. And after rummaging around a bit and, Derek teaching Scott how to use all his senses to figure out what happened, we find out that Isaac was actually locked in a freezer in his basement by his father. Chris and Gerard are discussing Isaac. They are rather curious to see whether he is a werewolf, if he's going to turn into one. Chris is against it because we know that Chris really does follow the moral code, but he does tell Gerard about how Isaac's father's car door was ripped off. The assumption is that Isaac is the one who killed him, right? And that by having this strength to rip off a car door, that he must be a werewolf. Allison listens in on this whole thing, and she sees a cop walking away from Chris and Gerard carrying a box. She tries to call Styles, who eventually answers once he's out of detention, and she tells him about it. She describes the picture on the box, and Styles confirms that it's Wolfsbane. So Styles knows that it's obviously for Isaac. Allison doesn't even question who Isaac is. The full moon is out now, and Scott seems to be doing okay. He doesn't look very affected as what we saw in season 1. He's still pretty calm. Derek confirms that Isaac is the one who wanted the bite, that even though he explained about hunters and, you know, all the downsides of being a werewolf in Beacon Hills, that he still really wanted it, which is why he gave him the bite. Scott says that Derek needs to stop turning people into werewolves if he helps him. But we all know Derek's not gonna listen because Derek doesn't listen to anyone. Scott says that he's still gonna help because he feels some responsibility solely because Isaac is innocent. The camera guy, I don't know his name. I don't think they've mentioned his name, so I'm just gonna keep calling him camera guy. He shows up at Jackson's house and gives Jackson his camera. So Jackson gets it set up in his room to record himself going through the change, of course. The cop who is carrying the Wolfsbane box, so he's obviously like a part of the hunters, right? And I'm assuming that he is the informant for Chris from season 1 when he found out all the information that the sheriff knew about how the murdered humans were in some way, shape or form tied to arson or the Hale house burning down. His tires get shot by some arrows because of Allison, and when he steps out, she shoots him in the thigh. Slick girlfriend, okay? After that's done, she calls Styles and she tells him that she has managed to delay his journey to the police station where Isaac's in a holding cell. Styles is driving to the police station, and after having been in contact with Scott, says that he has a plan. Allison had to go to Isaac's house where Scott is not doing so well. After all, the full moon is still having an effect on him, and he asks Allison to lock him in the freezer. There's like sad music playing in the background for this scene. I don't know why. Like, why are they so surprised? It's been like, what, 4 months since he turned into a werewolf. Of course he's not gonna have a grasp on controlling himself on the full moon so easily. Isaac is also doing absolutely horrible in his holding cell since the full moon is now out. Derek and Styles are together, our favorite duo, back together. Styles gives Derek a breakdown of where the keys would be kept, which are in the sheriff's office, but they need to get past the front desk, which is manned by a cop. Derek says that he's gonna use his natural charm to be a distraction while Styles goes and gets the key. We also finally have the confirmation that Derek has been claimed innocent by the cops, so he's okay, although Styles is really doubting that. Derek goes to the front desk and he charms, like he tries to flirt his way through. You know what? With that face and his signature leather look, it works. It will work, okay? He's got some riz. It will work on anyone. Styles successfully gets the keys to the holding cell, and as he's going to where Isaac's being kept, he runs into that hunter cop who got shot by Allison carrying the Wolfsbane box, and they still for a second before the hunter grabs Styles and pulls him to where Isaac is. But here's the thing, a holding cell is obviously not strong enough to hold a werewolf, a fully wolfed out Isaac, so he had busted out already. He attacks, and I'm pretty sure he kills the hunter cop, and Styles is going to be his next target before Derek shows up, saves the day, crushes the Wolfsbane, and he does this like alpha roar on Isaac that turns him back to normal. Meanwhile, with Scott and Allison, he yells at her to go upstairs because he can't control like how he's gonna be, like he's worried that he's gonna attack Allison. So she goes up but sees the reptilian looking creature in the house. And so she screams. Obviously, Scott hears this. He tries to bust out of the chained up freezer. But you know, the love for his woman is what drives him. So he does manage to bust out. They both see the reptilian creature. When Scott growls at it, it runs off. It just runs away. Episode 3 starts off with Allison getting gas for her car when she gets kidnapped, and she wakes up tied in a chair opposite Chris, who is in the same situation, but he actually staged this whole thing to teach her some kind of lesson. He shows the arrow that she had used to shoot the hunter cop guy. So Chris obviously knows what she did. He tells her that in the next full moon they are going to kill Isaac, but that it's not his or Gerard's choice. It was actually a woman's choice, because it's the Argent family tradition where the men are trained to be like the foot soldiers or whatever, and the women are trained to become leaders. So I guess that's what he's trying to train her for. He leaves and asks another hunter to just time how long it takes Allison to get out of being tied. They did all this at Hale House, by the way. I guess it belongs to the hunters now. Also, they finally created like an intro song for Teen Wolf, and we see it in season 2. I like it. It's quite catchy. In school, Jackson overhears Styles telling Scott that Isaac is Derek's problem now. The cops are obviously looking for Isaac. We are then shown a sad story of a blonde girl named Erica. The gang and the rest of their class, they're in PE, who is also taught by Coach Finstock. They're doing rock climbing, and Erica, she has like a history of epilepsy, and Allison is the one who has to tell the coach. I thought he's supposed to know this already, but so she tries to climb up. She panics halfway and she has to come down. You know, people are mean, so they kind of ridicule her a little bit. Later on, when there's nobody in the gym, she tries to conquer this rock wall by herself. So she starts to climb. Midway, she actually suffers a seizure, so she loses her grip to fall, right? But Scott, while she was climbing up that rock wall and she was starting to get an episode coming, Scott could actually sense it all the way from the cafeteria. He arrives in time to catch her. She's brought to the Beacon Hills Hospital, where Melissa is the one taking care of her. So Erica is like a known patient there. And apparently she was doing okay for a while before this seizure happened. Melissa leaves Erica alone, saying that the doctor's gonna come in soon, before she gets wheeled away into another room by the one and only Derek. He gives her the promise of what a world of being a werewolf would look like, that she's gonna be hot, she's gonna be physically fit, she's gonna be fine, she's gonna be cured and all that, right? I guess you know what happens next. The next day, we see that Styles is trying to get a ring of keys to an ice skating ring by a boy who sits alone in this cafeteria table, and his name is Boyd. As soon as he gets the keys and he brings it to Scott, Erica, who is suddenly in a leather outfit with a very lovely miniskirt, which I would want in my own closet, even though it's not very appropriate for her to wear to a high school, but it's so obvious that she is now a werewolf. Jackson confronts Lydia because he thinks Lydia has an immunity for the bite, because she got the bite from the alpha, right? And here's the thing that Peter said in season 1: the bite will either turn you or kill you. Lydia did not turn into anything per their knowledge, and she's very much alive. The assumption from Jackson is that perhaps she has some kind of immunity, and he thinks that she passed it to him, whether it was through saliva or her blood or whatever. So he's a complete asshole to her, didn't even ask if she was okay despite her going missing for 2 days after being attacked by Peter in season 1. He just walks away. What a trash man. What did Lydia even see in him? After that encounter with Jackson, Lydia is crying. She goes into the female bathroom, into a stall, and having a moment with herself. And she sees a pair of feet from the stall. And it's men's feet, by the way. She gets out of the stall, but the person is gone. And she runs out. She's trying to see who it is. She follows the person. The hallways are like totally empty, and she keeps running after this person until this figure stops in front of the school's trophy case. He leans in to look at something, and then he just leaves through the door. Lydia runs up to the trophy case to see what he was looking at, and it was a trophy that had the name Peter Hale. Styles and Scott obviously know that Derek is the one who changed Erica. Scott is at work and we finally see Dr. Deaton again. Scott asks him the question that we all want to know the answer to, which is number one, how did Dr. Alan Deaton find him in the middle of the woods? And number two, how did he know how to save him? But Dr. Deaton just turns it into a question about Scott getting a raise, and our boy is too happy, so he just leaves the conversation there. Lydia and Allison meet Scott and Styles at the skating ring, which is what Styles got the keys for, because Boyd, he's the one who resurfaces the ice there. They have their little double date moment. Scott and Allison go into a photo booth and we see that when a picture is being taken of Scott, it's like when you take a picture of your dog or your cat with your camera flash on, it's just white flashes, right? Lydia, meanwhile, is a prodigy in ice skating. She's killing it. The girls are doing very well. Scott, as usual, sucks. Not putting his enhanced abilities to good use as usual. Lydia sees petals on the ground and she starts to follow them until she sees a wolfsbane flower sprouting up from the ice. As Lydia goes closer to the plant, she sees from under the ice that Peter is there and he's like banging on it and he's screaming and yelling. So she starts screaming loudly, which causes Scott and Allison to come out of the photo booth just for them to see Styles trying to hold on to her, trying to calm her down because there's actually nothing there. In school, Scott goes up to Erica and asks who Derek is going to turn next because he knows that Derek needs at least 3 betas under him. We don't get this information from anywhere, by the way. Like, why the number 3? Why does he need 3 betas? Why does he need betas in the first place? Okay, I guess for why he needs beta in the first place is because of Gerard's threat, right, at the end of episode 1. But as for the number, what's so special about 3, right? I don't know. Victoria is cleaning Allison's room. Well, really, she was just snooping around, of course, spying on her daughter, when she finds the note that Scott had left in Allison's locker way back in episode 1. He had bought her the dress. She's obviously pissed because she knows who it's from. She goes to the kitchen and girl pulls the most ridiculous lunatic move I've ever seen. She cuts her hand with a knife. And you know what? She doesn't even flinch from that. She uses that injury as an excuse to see Melissa at the Beacon Hills Hospital because Melissa is the one who's like patching her up, and she starts to ask questions about Scott, like how he's doing and all that, when poor innocent Melissa accidentally lets out that Scott isn't as sad as she thought he would be after going through a breakup, especially since it's his first girlfriend. This just confirms Victoria's suspicions of Scott and Allison still seeing each other. I know I said Victoria was mean in episode 10 of season 1 when she yelled at Allison for no reason, but you know what? I kind of love her. That was a very smart move. Now that Kate is gone, Victoria shall have my heart. She's absolutely stunning too. Oh my god, she rocks the red short hair. I live. Scott and Styles suspect that Derek is going to turn Boyd next because he's missing from his usual table in the cafeteria. So Styles goes to Boyd's house looking for him, and Scott goes to the ice skating ring. Jackson goes to Hale's house looking for Derek to confront him about the bite, about why nothing happened. But he sees that Hale House has been taken over by hunters, and there was this dead guy on the table. Chris discourages Jackson from turning into a werewolf, but he doesn't tell Jackson the reason why. Now I think that if he told Jackson the real reason why he shouldn't become a werewolf, which is that they will kill him, it would be a great deterrent, don't you think? Styles reaches Boyd's house, but there's nobody home. Erica shows up, then she knocks him out and throws him in the trash. After doing that, she goes to the skating ring where Scott was actually trying to convince Boyd not to become a werewolf. Derek Isaac and Erica show up, of course. Isaac and Erica go to attack Scott, but they're like total newbies in this whole wolf thing, right? They may have on, their cool looking outfits or whatever, but the truth is they suck. I mean, they can't fight for shit because Scott kicks their ass and he knocks the both of them out. He just has natural talent, for fighting. Not in other sports, but for fighting, yeah. So Derek turns all alpha. Obviously, he overpowers Scott. He does injure Scott quite a lot. And we see Scott trying a last-ditch effort of discouraging Boyd from becoming a werewolf, but Boyd lifts his shirt up and we see that he's already gotten the bite. He leaves with Derek, Isaac, and Erica. Scott manages to pull himself up and he goes to the animal clinic. He sees that the wound that he got from Derek still hasn't healed, and Dr. Deaton says that it's because it's a bite from an alpha. Scott sees that there is a dead body on Dr. Deaton's table. It's the dead body that Jackson saw when he went to Hale House looking for Derek that the hunters had on a table. So what happened is that Chris actually brought this body to Dr. Deaton. He knows that Dr. Deaton is not just a normal vet. He knows things about the mythical world that's out there. So this body was actually a very young hunter, and there are huge claw marks on his chest. Huge. Larger than the one that a werewolf would cause. Whiny baby Jackson, he is angrily practicing shooting at the lacrosse field, and when he's done, he tries to leave, but his car is stuck. He gets out, angry, frustrated. He's trying to push, he's trying to lift it up, and after some effort, he was actually able to lift his car up for a while. So he's shook. He has enhanced strength. Episode 4 starts with Dr. Deaton helping Scott with his wound from the alpha. He finally tells Scott that he knows a lot about the mythical creatures that are out there, and it's too much to explain right now how he knows all this, but just that he does. The thing that caused the death of this man was definitely not a werewolf. It is a more dangerous creature that's out there, but he doesn't know what it is. So he tells Scott that the Argents would have notes, they would have documents, right? Information from their decades of hunting things like werewolves. The key word being that there are more out there than just werewolves. Chris comes back with Gerard, so Scott goes to hide so that he can listen in on their conversation as well. It appears that Gerard and Alan Deaton actually know each other from way back when. Dr. Deaton shows that on the body there is a small puncture wound at the back of the neck, and there are traces of like a paratoxin, like some paralytic agent around their wound that caused the hunter to become paralyzed from the neck down. But of course, the cause of death is not from that, it's from the huge claw marks on the front of the body. Styles is getting his Jeep fixed. I don't know if it was routine maintenance or poor thing is breaking down a lot. So he's like giving instructions to the mechanic who's working on the car, and then he goes to leave as a disgruntled customer. When he touches the doorknob, there's like something slimy on it. So he gets grossed out and he walks out of the office. He's trying to text someone when his hand suddenly just freezes, and he finds that his whole body becomes paralyzed as he drops to the ground. Just in time for him to see that some reptilian creature is in there, and it kills the mechanic. Not by how you think it would kill the mechanic, like how it killed Isaac's dad, right? Or the hunter by slashing it. It paralyzes the mechanic, yes, but it actually hits a button that lowers the thing that Styles' Jeep was on so that it crushes the mechanic. The creature doesn't attack Styles, and in his half paralytic state, Styles still manages to get a call through to 911. Allison was supposed to meet Scott in the woods. While she's trying to go, Gerard actually stops her, and he has this whole conversation about like trust or whatever. He like wants her to trust him, and he wants to trust her, and he's like, oh, you must always trust the Argent family. Just, your everyday conversation you'll be having with your grandfather, I guess. After what happened with Styles at the mechanic, Scott doesn't show up at the woods. He goes instead to Styles, and the sheriff is there, but Styles obviously can't tell the sheriff what's going on. So when he leaves, Scott is waiting in a car, and he gets in and he tells Scott everything that he saw, which is matching what Scott and Allison saw in the end of episode 2. Styles also says that he kind of felt like he knew who this reptile thing was, but he just, like, it felt like it was a friend who was looking through him, like as if it knew him. Derek had created some kind of makeshift obstacle course in his basement warehouse looking location for Boyd, Erica, and Isaac to train with. They try to make it look like it's really tough, but Derek obviously overpowers them. And he gets quite pissy about it. But here's the thing, he was being thrown around by the Alpha 2 in season 1. Derek says that he's trying to teach them to survive, not fight. Erica jumps up on him and she makes out with him, and then he pushes her away and she's like, "What? Is it because you're the alpha?" And he's like, "No, it's because I have something or somebody else in mind for you." What the hell does that even mean? They're all just really stunned because the Argents, like, they declared war on the werewolves, right? But like there's been no action so far, so he doesn't know what the Argents are up to. And I still have no idea what is the place that they're living in, because I'm pretty sure that Derek leaves through a school bus looking door. If anyone knows, please just drop it in the comments, because I cannot for the life of me figure out what the hell he is even living in. Lydia has to see a school counselor and she doesn't want to go, but when her mom enters her room and she pulls the covers off Lydia, she sees that there's blood all over and Lydia's knuckles have like wounds on them. We can see on Lydia's vanity that she had like repeatedly punched a small mirror. Lydia had no memory of even punching the mirror, or she didn't even realize that she had like open wounds on her knuckles. So she's sitting and waiting to see the school counselor. She's wearing gloves and there's a boy next to her who compliments the gloves. Have a little small conversation going before she gets annoyed at him, but he's like super into her. Eventually it's Lydia's turn to see the counselor, and can I just say that her outfit is giving equestrian sophistication realness. Okay, I live. The school counselor that Lydia sees is apparently their French teacher. What? Are we gonna see that their English teacher is their music teacher next? What's with the dual roles here in this school? And Queen Lydia, nothing slips past her, so she actually does ask the school counselor, what the hell does a French teacher know about counseling students? Well, apparently she has a master's in behavioral psychology and has like clocked in a certain number of hours of field work. Also, something to add is that the counselor, I don't know her name yet, is actually our homegirl Maya from Pretty Little Liars. Shout out to that queen. Styles is playing messenger for Scott and Allison, running up and down the school to relay messages to each other. So they basically try to ask her about this particular book, which Styles gives it the name Bestiary. Thank you very much. Which both Allison and Scott thought he was saying bestiality. Allison said that he probably would keep something like that in his office. So they kind of make a small plan on how they're gonna get Gerard's keys and get into the principal's office and thus get the bestiary. Jackson asks Danny for help to brighten up the footage that he took on the night of the full moon when he thought that he was gonna turn into a werewolf. I don't see what brightening the footage will do if he's just laying there all night, right? When you look at the footage. But Jackson's logic, I guess, so he asks Danny for help. But later on, before the semi-finals game, Danny and camera guy walk up to Jackson. We now know that camera guy's name is actually Matt. We only learned this in episode 4, but I'm just gonna keep calling him camera guy. I don't want to call him Matt. Well, Jackson's pissed, but here's the thing. They found out that the footage that Jackson took was actually edited for it to be on a loop. They found a point where you can see the footage blink, so someone had deleted 2 hours of footage from the camera. Okay, real quick, I know this is a weird transition I have in like the middle of the video. I left for vacation and this is the only time I could find to film the rest of this video because I really wanted to roll out Teen Wolf Season 2 as quick as I could. So I'm real sorry for the change, But let's continue on with what was happening in episode 4. The video was edited to be on loop for 2 hours of just Jackson sleeping. Jackson tries to tell Scott to toughen up during the game because of some heavyweight champion looking kind of guy in the opposite team who's kicking Beacon Hill's ass. But Scott says that he can't because Gerard is watching the game and he's observing, looking for another young werewolf. Allison manages to get Gerard's keys and she hands them to Styles. I'm also now just realizing that Chris didn't tell Gerard that Scott is a werewolf. Camera guy, and I'm sticking to that, takes more pictures of Allison. Styles, who now has the key to Gerard's office, is making his way when he sees Lydia crying in the car alone. So he tries to go and comfort her, and he successfully does manage to get her to want to open up to him. But due to the urgency of the situation, of what's presently happening, Styles has to go. He tells Lydia that he'll be right back and to just give him a few minutes. On the lacrosse field, however, that heavyweight champion looking guy that I was mentioning, he's injuring players left and right. And because Styles is not there, the coach has asked the audience if there's anyone else who can help play in the game. Boyd, who is right next to Erica, volunteers himself. And while Erica thinks it isn't really such a good idea, he doesn't care. Boyd does kill during the game though, which catches the attention of Scott, and he tries to tell Boyd to tone it down because Gerard is right there, but Boyd doesn't really care, even though he's starting to wolf out a little bit. Like, we can see that his eyes are turning yellow. Scott actually takes a hit during lacrosse and everyone in the audience can hear the bones snap, including Melissa, who, remember, is a nurse. She and Allison run down to Scott. Scott tries to insist that he's okay, but like Melissa's trying to say that we heard a crack, honey. Probably not okay. Like, he's gotta try and play this off somehow, right? Gerard appears and he invites Scott over for dinner. Styles is trying to find the bestiary in Gerard's office when Erica shows up. She brings Styles to the swimming pool where Derek's actually waiting, and Derek asks Styles about what he saw in the mechanic's garage. As Styles answers Derek and he's describing like this hunky reptilian beast, it appears right behind him, instantly knocks Erica out. Derek tries to save Styles, but he gets nicked in the neck. Styles holds him and catches him, and he tries to run. At the same time, he's trying to get his phone out to call Scott, but he drops it, and when he tries to pick it up, he lets Derek go, and Derek falls into the swimming pool. So Styles makes the decision to leave the phone and then jump into the pool to save Derek from drowning. In the Argent house, Scott is there for dinner. Chris and Victoria obviously didn't get a heads up from Gerard, who's apparently a wingman for Allison and Scott. They were rather pissed when Scott walked in, which reminds me, remember when Victoria found the note from Scott about gifting Allison that dress? I don't recall Chris and Victoria doing anything about it. Chris actually asks Scott into the kitchen and threatens him. Scott weasels his way out of it, and when they're back at the dining table, Allison gives the excuse that they've got some homework to do, so they go upstairs. They start looking for the bestiary because apparently it wasn't in Gerard's office when Styles was looking for it. Apparently, his enhanced hearing helps him break into safes. Who knew? There is a book in there, but it's not the bestiary, it's a recipe book. Allison says that maybe it's not like a physical book that they should be looking for, and it has to be something that Gerard keeps close to him at all times. At this point, Styles and Derek have been in the water for like 2 hours. Erica is still knocked out. Not so powerful, huh? Styles spots his phone, which is right at the edge of the pool. He lets Derek go, and as Derek is sinking towards the bottom of the pool, Styles swims over, gets to the edge, gets his phone, and he dials for Scott. Scott, he rejects the call, so Styles had to just throw his phone somewhere, which was into the pool, and then he goes and saves Derek from drowning. This whole time, that reptilian creature was kind of just surrounding them, but it seemed like it physically couldn't get into the water, like it was scared of it or something. Back in the Argent house, Allison and Scott kind of figure out that Perhaps the bestiary is on a USB stick that's attached to Gerard's keys. But the keys are back in the school and they're still hanging on the door to Gerard's office. So Scott leaves. He rushes to the school. He's looking for Styles. He finds the keys, so that's great. Then he hears like some noises, so he rushes to the pool. He's wolfed out. He fights that reptile thing, and then that thing throws Scott into like some glass. So Scott takes a piece of glass wanting to fight it, but it gets spooked when it sees its own reflection and it runs off. After that whole ordeal and the gang is safe, Scott and Styles are trying to access the bestiary outside in the school parking lot when Derek comes out totally fine with Erica, saying that that thing is called a canema. The only reason Derek could confirm that it's a canema is because it got scared of its own reflection. Scott and Styles couldn't find it in the bestiary because it's not in English, it's in archaic Latin. And the reason why it got confused or scared by its reflection, the canema, is because when it looked at itself, it doesn't know who it is. Scott suggests that they should work together and maybe even work together with the Argents, but Derek says no, of course. And I'd say it's quite a logical decision from Derek, considering Gerard is in the picture now, and especially because of the next part. Scott goes to Beacon Hills Hospital, waiting outside to pick his mom up, but he immediately gets stabbed in the side by the one and only Gerard Argent. He knows that Scott is the werewolf, and he says that he will kill Melissa if Scott doesn't help Gerard in the very near future. Episode 5 begins with Jackson working out in the gym at school. He's trying to lift some weights, but he clearly didn't have the strength that he suddenly had at the end of episode 3 when he lifted his jeep up. Erica drags Jackson to Derek's hideout when Derek questions what happened on the night of the full moon. Jackson says he doesn't know. He tells Derek about the video as well, about how nothing had happened. But Derek tries an, shall we say, alternative method in finding out the truth. He pours a drop of the cannabis toxin into Jackson's mouth because he says a snake cannot be poisoned by its own venom. Well, Jackson chokes on it and it's gross, by the way, and he gets paralyzed. So it's not Jackson. Derek lets him be and he concludes that it's probably Lydia. Isaac makes Jackson tell the sheriff he didn't see Isaac and his father arguing outside of the house before his dad was murdered in episode 2. So Isaac is back in school. Styles Googles Canema and he finds out that it's some kind of like were-jaguar from South America who only goes after murderers. Danny tells Jackson that he has a program that can recover the edited portion of the video. While Jackson's hearing all this, he suddenly seems to have enhanced hearing because he overhears Erica and Isaac talking about testing the poison on Lydia during chemistry class. During their math class, Jackson tries to ask Styles what a canema is. Do you know who's teaching the math class? Coach Finstock? Again? 3 classes? I guess he's a man of many qualifications and talent. But anyway, Jackson tells Scott and Styles what Derek did to him. Lydia, in the meantime, who was doing her own thing, and she's like a math queen, right? She starts to see the equations getting all muddled up, and they start going into some kind of spiral. Like all the students are just staring at her as she's at the front of the class, and they suddenly disappear, and Peter's there, and he's walking up to her. She suddenly wakes up and she is at the front of the class, but she's written "somebody help me" backwards over and over again on the board. The coach just dismisses this. The besties clearly are the only ones who care, and they figure out that Derek's next target is going to be Lydia. In chemistry, Styles rushes to sit next to Lydia and they signal to Allison by pointing towards Isaac and Erica, who are seated behind them. So they were supposed to do like a series of experiments where they have to switch partners every time Mr. Harris presses a bell or he says switch or something. Scott gets partnered with Erica first. He asks Erica to wait and to let him talk to Derek. As Erica responds with some rubbish, she makes a show by touching Scott's thigh because she knows like Allison's watching. So both Allison and Lydia watch this because to the rest of the school, Allison and Scott are still broken up. They're not supposed to be together, right? Allison, who was paired with Lydia first, tells her not to talk to Isaac or Erica at all. Partners are switched and Scott sits next to Lydia. Isaac gets partnered with Styles, who threatens him. Apparently, Isaac asked Lydia out in freshman year and she had ridiculed him. Alright, Isaac, this is not a therapy session, it's just chemistry. The partners switch again, and this time Isaac is seated next to Lydia, Scott is seated next to Styles, and Allison is right next to Erica. Can I just say that Erica reminds me of like young Britney? It's giving. Erica tells Allison that she thinks that Allison and Scott are like not gonna last. The experiment ends and the final product is supposed to be some kind of edible crystal structure. Isaac gives the crystal to Lydia and he had put a little bit of the Kanema venom on it, which like how do you not see that? Because the crystal is clear and the cannabis toxin is like sticky and it's gross. She eats the crystal anyway, and nothing happens to her. Derek is actually waiting outside the school because he knew that the results of this test would be ready. Scott, Styles, and Allison brainstorm ideas on how to keep Lydia safe. They're pretty sure that Derek won't do anything while Lydia is in school, but after school, for sure he's gonna do something. Allison says she may know someone who can translate the bestiary. Scott says that he will try to convince Derek. Also, Allison brought her crossbow to school. Nice. But it's pretty huge, so I just wonder how did it fit in her backpack? And why did she bring it in the first place? In the school library, Danny and camera guy get a little flirt on, and the camera guy asks who could have gotten into Jackson's room to be able to get the footage, edit it, and then put it back into the camera. When camera guy leaves after asking that question, Danny reveals to Jackson that he does know that camera guy is like obsessed with Allison, and at that moment our favorite gang walks in with Lydia in tow, minus Scott, and Jackson has an idea of who would have been able to get into his house and edit the footage. Allison asks the counselor to translate a specific page of the bestiary. Since when is she a counselor and a polyglot and what was it, English or English lit teacher? It's not just like she knows multiple languages but also a dead language. Come on. Anyway, apparently the Kanema's powers are very heightened during a full moon, very similar to werewolves. It's a social creature and it seeks a friend. Scott talks to Derek and Boyd on the lacrosse field, and apparently Derek has tasked Isaac and Erica to kill Lydia. They're like a whole leather gang now, but the glow up is tea. Derek says it's rare, but sometimes the shape they take as werewolves reflects who they are as a person on the inside, which is why the Kanema looks the way it is. Also, they seem to use a lot of like snake references or metaphors, but the Kanema has 4 limbs and a tail. What reptile do you think would be the most obvious pick when trying to describe something like that? A lizard, obviously, not a snake. I seriously don't know where they get a snake from. It looks like a damn lizard. In my opinion, the Kanema, it kind of reminds me of Dr. Connors, like when he turns into a lizard in Spider-Man. I'm not gonna show a picture of the Kanema because honestly it's quite frightening to look at. You should Google at your own risk or maybe just watch the show. Scott tries to reason out with Derek that maybe Lydia has immunity to the bite, like she did in season 1. Maybe she has immunity to the venom. Derek says it's impossible. Camera guy and Danny are working on recovering the video together, and he's looking through like some of the pictures that he took during the lacrosse game. While they're doing this, he actually notices that all the pictures that have Scott in them, there's a glow in his eyes. There's this white flashback. Scott tries to reason with Derek that Lydia has passed the immunity on to Jackson, which is why nothing happened after the bite. Derek disagrees again because, like he said, it's impossible, and he says that Lydia has got to go. Jackson, Styles, and Allison try to convince Lydia they're gonna have a study group together at Scott's house, and they're trying to rush her into like some safe place, right? So four of them get to Scott's house without Scott there. They lock and barricade the door. When Scott is, I guess still going through the school to leave, the coach actually yells at him because as co-captain, he's supposed to make sure that his team is ensuring the integrity of their equipment and all that. But Danny's shoulder pads were ripped. As Scott goes to look for Danny, camera guy actually bumps into him and he takes a full face-on flash picture of Scott. As a werewolf, you'd think he'd stay away from cameras, or he would have perhaps the instinct to look away. When camera guy checks the photo, of course he can see that glow is there in Scott's eyes, like when you take a picture of your pet with the flash on. Scott goes to confront Danny about the ripped shoulder pads, but Danny said that he is not the one who used it because he wasn't playing goal. Allison actually calls Scott before he can find out who was playing goal that day, urging him to come back because Derek and gang show up at Scott's house. Jackson brings Lydia to Scott's bedroom and he asks why she didn't give his house key back. See, Jackson thinks that Lydia is the one who did that thing with his footage because of the fact that she still has his house key. Lydia has quite a bit of a meltdown, I guess, about their relationship or the lack of one, but Jackson's cold, Jackson really doesn't care. Also, he suddenly has that ability to be able to tell when someone is lying because she kept saying that she hates him, but he could tell that she was lying. Jackson brings up the issue of the footage, but she obviously has no idea what he's talking about, and she gives him the house key back, which she was actually wearing as a necklace this whole time. She still has feelings for him, obviously, and I guess he can kind of tell, and he starts to kind of feel something in his heart as well because they start to make out. But while they're doing that, scales start to form on Jackson's body. Stiles asks Allison to shoot one of them from Derek's gang. But while they were, contemplating that, Isaac actually managed to get into the house. He pushes Stiles and Allison down. Lydia hears this and she comes running out of Scott's bedroom, but Allison tells her to get back and stay there. So she hides in Scott's bedroom and Jackson's gone out the window. Lydia calls the police, the lights go off, then Allison breaks into Scott's bedroom. She locks the door and she aims her crossbow at the open window, which is dripping with the Canema venom. Erica breaks in and then she tries to taunt Allison, who shoots an arrow towards her. Erica catches the arrow, of course, with her instincts and her abilities, and she taunts Allison. But here's the thing, Allison girl is a smart queen, okay? She doused the arrow in the Canema venom, so Erica gets paralyzed. Scott arrives to throw Isaac and Erica, who are now unconscious, out of his house at Derek's feet. Derek was disappointed with their performance, I suppose. They're not very good. The Canema crawls away on the roof. I guess it was watching this go down. Derek asks Boyd to get Isaac and Erica away. Lydia runs out, demanding to know what the hell happened. So now they all know that Lydia is not the Canema and that it's Jackson who is the Canema, who has apparently found a friend because he crawls away towards this car. He goes up to the driver's side and he puts his hand on the window where a gloved hand actually touches it back. I mean, look, I want to say that it's pretty obvious that it's Jackson. The hints were all there from the start, so us as the audience, we probably would have figured it out quite some time ago. Also, the Argents have been pretty quiet, huh? Is Gerard too busy running the school? Episode 6 starts with the full camera footage being recovered. Danny actually doesn't watch it, but he just transfers the complete file onto his tablet and he tosses it into the boot of his car. Who does that though? I mean, if it's such a small device, wouldn't you usually just put it in I don't know, the pocket behind your seat or in a bag, then in the car? Not just toss it like that, the way it is, into the boot of the car. Derek chases after the Canema alone and Allison drives Lydia home. Lydia, of course, is asking what's going on, but Allison says that she just, she can't tell Lydia, right? She just makes Lydia promised to keep Scott and Allison a secret. Scott and Styles show up in the place where Derek is fighting the Kanima. Chris also suddenly appears and he starts shooting at it repeatedly. Yes, King, and it collapses to the ground. Derek is suddenly gone, but the Kanima is indestructible, it seems, because it stands up, tosses Chris against a wall. Gerard is there watching the whole thing. Scott stares at Gerard before running after the Kanima. You know, the thing is, the Kanima actually circled around Gerard, but it didn't attack him. Scott loses the Kanima because apparently it doesn't have a scent. Styles just appears and he wonders how Jackson managed to pass that venom test that Derek had performed on him. They're in some kind of alleyway that's right next to a club. They see the Canima's shadow up on the roof. Scott thinks that the Canima is after Danny because Danny was actually in line. Scott and Styles get in through the back and they find Danny, who's, you know, just dancing like one would do in a club. Scott can see Jackson, or I guess the Canima, like crawling around on the ceiling. Styles is sent to get Danny while Scott tries to follow the Canima, but he loses it after a while and by now is actually on the ground crawling through people and paralyzing everyone in its way. Derek suddenly appears and he starts fighting with the Kanima in the club. He manages to injure the Kanima pretty badly, so it starts to leave like a trail of blood. The crowd starts to disperse from all the fallen partygoers and Scott is able to follow the trail that's being left by the Kanima. It leads him to a parking lot where Jackson is passed out. Danny is one of the people who got paralyzed and Styles catches up with Scott. Meanwhile, Lydia, who has a small dog named Prada, she brings Prada out for a quick toilet break in a garden. But after a while, Prada is not to be seen and Lydia tries to call her back, but she doesn't come back. So Lydia walks out towards the gate and that's when Therapy Boy shows up with Prada in his arms. Apparently he is Lydia's neighbor, so he just asks if she's okay and then some flirty things happen. Back in the club, the cops arrive and as Danny is being wheeled away by the paramedics, Scott does ask if he's okay and also if there was anything weird that had happened. I mean, you know, define weird at this point. It's so general. Jackson is in the back of Styles' truck and he's still passed out. As they're about to leave, the sheriff actually shows up, so they have to get out and kind of give the sheriff a reason as to why they're outside a gay club. Styles gives the excuse that both him and Scott were there because Danny had just broken up with his boyfriend, so they were there for moral support. Chris and Gerard were actually parked nearby and Chris managed to find out that about 7 people were paralyzed, but the rumor going around is that it was some bad drugs. Chris asks Gerard why the Kanima didn't attack him. Also, Gerard is like on some pills, I don't know. And he says that he has some kind of idea about the creature, but he doesn't say what. The encounter that they had earlier when Derek was fighting with the Kanima was actually, I think, the first time that Chris has seen Derek since Kate was offed. Gerard says that they can use the Kanima to their advantage and it can help them flush Derek out from wherever he's hiding. Scott and Styles chain the unconscious Jackson in the back of a police truck, like the kind that they use to transport criminals to jail kind of truck. Which, how did they even get in the first place? They park it in the woods and Jackson's awake the next morning. Styles brings him food and he tells Jackson that he's been killing people. Jackson says that his parents are definitely going to look for him, but Styles said that he had his tracks covered because he sent them a text through Jackson's phone. His text to his dad said something like, "Everything's fine, stay at a friend's house, love you." But here's the thing. Jackson's dad immediately knew that something was wrong and he went to the sheriff about it because he said that ever since Jackson found out that he was adopted, he has never been able to say that he loves his adopted parents. So Jackson would never say I love you. In school, Gerard asks Allison who she's going to have a sleepover with, and it's Lydia. Didn't even know that this was happening. Gerard says that he and Chris have a problem with the canema and that Jackson didn't show up to school. What happened to the old principal anyway? Did he just like put in his resignation letter and is he just living life with the knowledge that Allison's parents tortured him in the back of a van? Yeah, Gerard tells Allison that Jackson's parents and the police are asking around about Jackson and that if she knows anything that she should tell him. Even though she says she doesn't, he can tell that she's lying. So she kind of gives away some information that it may have something to do with Scott. When Allison leaves her grandfather's office, she sees that there are CCTVs being installed around the school. And during class, Allison tries to tell Scott about that whole thing with Gerard. But guess who shows up as a substitute teacher for that class? None other than Miss Victoria Argent. Styles is actually still in the van with Jackson in the middle of the woods, and he's trying to describe to Jackson how he looks like, as a lizard. But Jackson doesn't believe him. Styles asks Jackson what is it that he did after the semi-finals game. Jackson said that he went home, but Styles said that what he actually did, which was, to terrorize Styles and Derek, but Jackson still doesn't believe him. When class with Victoria as a sub ends, she asks Allison to stay back, and she says that she's noticed Allison making a lot of calls to somebody named Styles. Allison said the only reason she's been calling Styles that much is because both her parents and Gerard have been asking her to keep an eye on Lydia. And like Styles has had a crush on her since forever, so he knows all the tea about what's going on with Lydia. Victoria accepts this, but she reinforces the fact that Allison needs to stay away from Scott, and that as long as she does, they won't kill Scott. Talk about a veiled threat. Styles, the oblivious Styles, still pretends to be Jackson, and he's still like texting his dad. Allison shows up and she tells Styles that everybody knows Jackson is missing. Styles turns on the police radio and he hears that the cops are actively looking for Jackson and that they're all headed in the direction of the woods. Styles calls Jackson's mom and then he tosses the phone in the woods before he and Allison drive someplace else. Scott is at the hospital. He went to visit Danny just to see if everything is okay with him and Jackson, but Danny says they're fine. He also tells Scott about the recovered footage that is still on the tablet in the trunk of his car. We actually get a little glimpse into Scott's academic, shall we say, progress. Turns out he's failing 2 classes and he will be held back if he fails his midterms. So, Melissa is pretty pissed. Scott cycles to Danny's car that's still in the parking lot, but the car's been broken into and the tablet isn't there anymore. Back in the woods where Jackson is being held, Scott, Styles, and Allison actually have a little discussion, a quick kiki, if you will, about it. I mean, Jackson's still in the back of the van, right? So he can obviously hear everything that they are talking about. Scott thinks that someone who's protecting him must have taken the tablet. Scott brings up the fact that the Kanema is supposed to only go after murderers, which was the thing that Styles had found out about shortly after they discovered that whatever that reptilian creature thing is called a Kanema, because it ran past Scott and Allison in episode 2 when they were in Isaac's house. Then in episode 4, it killed the mechanic, but it didn't kill Styles. Also, in episode 4, when our favorite duo Styles and Derek were trapped in a pool, Scott theorizes that maybe, just maybe, the Kanema was trying to keep Styles and Derek in the pool. Now, Styles doesn't really want to save Jackson, but Scott says that they have to save Jackson. And I think Jackson, maybe has some kind of feeling for a moment, but then scales start to appear in his hand. So I guess you know what's coming next. And Styles says that he really needs to go and talk to Lydia after accidentally ditching her in episode 4 when he was supposed to talk to her when he found her crying alone in her car, remember? Scott and Allison just sit in, I guess, her car, and they're supposed to be watching over Jackson, who is currently going through that change. It's really disgusting. The scene is so... Scott actually does ponder about whether Lydia's immunity can save Jackson, but like after that he and Allison get it on and they don't notice, despite Scott's heightened senses, that Jackson, aka the Kanema, has escaped, and the only person who does notice this is Styles when he returns. Allison says that she feels like she needs to tell her dad, and Styles also feels like he needs to tell the sheriff what's going on. Scott and Styles, they plan to tell the sheriff everything. Like everything. When Allison gets home, Lydia is actually in her room and she really wants to talk to Allison. But you know, Allison's like, I'm a little busy girl, not right now. And Allison actually lets slip that unless Lydia can find someone who can speak archaic Latin because of the bestiary, then you know, she's kind of busy. And of course, our resident genius Lydia can understand archaic Latin. Meanwhile, Scott and Styles, they go to the sheriff's office, right? Because they plan to tell the sheriff everything. But Jackson, as human Jackson, is seated there with the sheriff's coat on because he was like being kept half naked by the gang. Jackson's dad, aka his lawyer, is also there, of course. Back in the Argent house, Lydia says that Miss Morel's translation of how the Kanema seeks a friend is actually incorrect. Kanema actually seeks a master, so the person who is behind the Kanema's actions is not protecting him, he's controlling it. This video is like probably at the 1.5 hour-ish mark by now, and we're still only halfway through the season. I might have to split the video for season 3 once I eventually get to it, because season 3 has like doubled episodes. Okay, I'm gonna do it like 3A and 3B. Moving on to episode 7. In the middle of some random location, there is a trailer. A couple is in it and they're arguing, and suddenly the trailer gets attacked. We see a hooded figure pointing the Kanema in the direction of the trailer. The man goes out and he gets killed by the Kanema. Kanema breaks in through the window and he's like going to attack the woman, but it stops when it sees that she's pregnant. Scott, Styles, and Allison have another discussion. Seems like a recurring theme. They say that it's clear that Jackson doesn't know he's the Kanema and he doesn't know what kind of harm he's inflicting onto people, even though Styles already told Jackson what he is. But you know, Jackson being Jackson, still type A for asshole with more. Speaking of Jackson, he actually got a restraining order for Scott and Styles because of the whole kidnapping episode. The restraining order states that Scott and Styles have to stay at least 50 feet away from Jackson. Over on Derek's side of things, he says that Isaac and Erica, they need to get on Scott and Styles' good side because they actually don't know that Jackson is the Kanema yet, and also the Kanema is hard to kill, so they're gonna need Scott and Styles' help. There's also another full moon coming, so I guess in terms of like time stamps, it's been exactly a month since Scott and Allison were first exposed to the Kanema in Isaac's house in episode 2. Here's a random thought though. I'm pretty sure Isaac is not over 18 because they're still in high school. So like, who is registered to be his legal guardian since his dad is dead? Derek doesn't even have a house. So Derek is like preparing for the upcoming full moon. You know, he's got like chains and all that. Isaac says that Derek's gonna be alone against the Argents on the full moon. He suggests that they forget about the Kanema for a while and focus on the Argent problem that they're having first. But Derek says that it's important they find the Kanema first because when he was getting his ass kicked by the Sid thing in episode 6, he also noticed how Gerard was totally not fazed by the Kanema and how the Kanema had just like circled around Gerard without even trying to attack him. In the school library, Allison discreetly hands Scott a tablet through the bookshelves that contains a translated version of the bestiary, courtesy of Lydia. Similar to what Styles had actually found out about the fact that the Kanema goes after murderers, the bestiary says that the Kanema is a weapon of vengeance. The Kanema was actually supposed to be a werewolf, but it can't, and I quote, can't be until it resolves that in its past which manifested. Either I wrote it down wrong, I don't know what it means. Basically, there's some issue that the person who is supposed to become a werewolf is holding on to, and until that's resolved, it cannot be in its true form. So it's stuck in something like a limbo where it's this Kanema form instead. So Allison theorizes that it could have something to do with Jackson's real parents. Allison says that she will try to talk to Jackson, and Scott meanwhile has to take like some kind of makeup test for chemistry to save his grades. Jackson, he goes into some lab and there's a snake in a tank in the lab. He picks it up. I don't know what kind of weird shit was going on here, but like he swallows the snake whole. So about the Kanema situation, Allison actually follows Jackson and he walks into the boys' locker room. She tries to go in, but camera guy, who is everywhere, bursts out and he's like, you know, we all know that he has this obsession with Allison. So she's kind of distracted because she's trying to get to Jackson, and he asks her out to a rave that is happening on Friday. The poor girl unknowingly says yes. Styles, on the other hand, was trying to get information out of Lydia because Lydia probably knows. She doesn't want to tell, of course. Erica actually overhears Styles and Lydia talking about this, so she pulls Styles away and she asks why they're so interested in Jackson's real parents. She says that Jackson's real parents are actually buried in Beacon Hill Cemetery. Well, Allison, she walks into the locker room and Jackson's like naked and creepy. Scott can hear Allison's thumping heart, you know, while he's taking his exam, and Erica actually can hear it too. She figures out it's Allison. Jackson keeps harassing Allison, like he says that Scott's gonna join Derek's pack, and he says that she and Scott won't work out. Out of nowhere, Jackson suddenly kind of regains his consciousness, I guess, like he becomes himself again, just as Scott busts into the locker room and Jackson's like wearing his shorts to be a little bit more decent. They fight to some background EDM and they break stuff like the sink. Erica is actually making her way towards the locker room as well, and like Styles is in tow and he's trying to tell Erica to please not tell Derek that it's Jackson. Erica lets out some information that she actually used to have a crush on Styles. They see water seeping out through the door from the boys' like changing room. Jackson and Scott bust out after that, you know, they're still fighting with each other. Erica and Styles pull them apart, but then Mr. Harris shows up and he gives all of them detention. Camera guy, who is still there, why? He sees the tablet on the ground peeking out of Styles' backpack, the one that Allison gave Scott with the information about the bestiary. You know, quickly takes a peek at it while this commotion is happening and everyone's all distracted. Then he sends it to himself. What a perv. So remember the guy that like Lydia met when she was going for counseling, and then apparently he's like her neighbor and he brought Prada back to her, yeah, all that. When he was at her house, he plucked a flower from behind her and then he gave it to her, and there is this, I didn't write it down because it was really cringy and I couldn't even get through the scene. You know, they were talking weirdly, something about how, you know, keep this flower and I'll know you, I don't know, like me or some shit like that, okay? So he basically just asks Lydia out, like asks her to meet him somewhere and to bring her stupid flower along. So Melissa was actually at home that day and she brought like some clean clothes into Scott's room, and she couldn't help but start to clean his room because of how messy it was. And as she was cleaning it, she finds a box with only one single condom left. So she goes to school to find Miss Victoria Argent. She unknowingly tells Victoria that she thinks Scott and Allison are still seeing each other, but she doesn't tell her about the condom thing. Victoria, spicy as ever, tells Melissa that maybe Scott is seeing someone else with low standards. You know what? She may not be an Argent by blood, but she got the soul for it, okay? So the gang who got detention: Scott, Styles, Allison, Jackson, Erica, and camera guy, just because he was there. They all sit at like separate tables, so Scott is with Styles, Erica is alone, and then Jackson, Allison, and camera guy together on one table. Allison sees camera guy. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna call him Matt. Camera guy is too many syllables, and he keeps appearing, so yeah. Anyway, Allison sees him like looking at the bestiary, I think, and like him whispering the word Kanema, but can't tell for sure whether she really heard it or not, considering it seemed that way, okay? It was just depicted that way. Styles actually asks Scott, like, what if it's Matt who's controlling the Kanema? And Scott says it can't be Matt because he's the one who found out about the video footage. But Styles feels like it could just be him trying to throw off suspicion from himself. But Scott brings up a valid point, which is that why or what reason could Matt have to want to kill Isaac's dad or the mechanic? What's the tie, right? Scott says Styles is just saying that it's Matt because he doesn't like him. Jackson suddenly looks like he's in pain, so he rushes out of the library and Mr. Harris follows him. Scott and Styles jump over to Erica's table to ask her more about what she knows because of the fact that she knew that Jackson's real parents were not alive anymore. So apparently Erica's dad was actually the insurance investigator for Jackson's parents' death. They got into a car accident and Jackson is actually gonna get a huge settlement when he turns 18. Erica says that she can log into her dad's email and then look at his inbox in order to find the report from the night that Jackson's parents were killed. As she's looking for it though, Scott gets called to the principal's office. Oh yeah, a little update on Jackson, like when he was in the bathroom, you know, from that pain thing, the snake comes out of his eye. Disgusting. I thought we were past shit like that, man. He's like totally fine after that, so he and Harris go back to the library, and then Erica found out in her report that his parents, Jackson's parents, were dead on arrival the day before Jackson was born. Mr. Harris leaves after a while, but like the rest of them, they have to continue reshelving the library, so they were alone. Scott, he was called to the principal's office, right? But actually it was Victoria, and she asks him point blank if he's sleeping with Allison. He denies it, of course. The report that Erica found actually shows that Jackson's parents' death is inconclusive, which means that they could have also been murdered, which would tie in with the whole myth about the Kanema going after murderers seeking vengeance. Scott says that he needs to tell Jackson, but when he goes over to the next shelf, like aisle of books, he sees that Matt is down on the ground, paralyzed, or no, actually not paralyzed, knocked out. Jackson's jumping around. He nicks Erica as well. Jackson is like half human, half Kanema at this point. Library's like falling apart, and then Jackson, who's in this like zombified Kanema state, he goes to the blackboard and he writes, "Stay out of my way or I'll kill you all." Then he jumps out the window and Erica actually gets a seizure after being nicked. Scott and Styles bring Erica to Derek, and then Allison is the one who helps Matt. Derek breaks Erica's arm and he like twists it to get the venom out and to also trigger the healing process so that she'll stop her seizures. Styles stays with Erica, you know, in that stupid bus train thing that Derek has in his basement looking home, if you can even call it that. And where's Isaac anyway? And Boyd, where? I have not seen them for a minute. Scott asks Derek if he knows who the Kanema is now, and Derek says that he does know it's Jackson, but he just wanted Erica to like confirm it. Scott says that he will help Derek stop Jackson as a part of his pack. Derek was rather shocked about it. He has lovely eyes, by the way. But Scott says he'll only join on the condition that they do it his way and that they don't kill Jackson. At the same time, there were two very interesting things happening in Beacon Hills. Number one, remember the pregnant woman in the beginning of the episode, the one where her husband was brutally murdered by the Canema? She gives birth, and Melissa's actually her nurse, and in her dazed state of the recovery of just freshly giving birth, she tries to tell Melissa that the thing that killed her partner is not human. But of course, Melissa doesn't know anything about the mythical world that is happening in Beacon Hills, so she just takes it that this patient is a little bit loopy from the drugs, if you will, and she lets her be and lets her sleep alone in the room. Someone comes in, murders her. The other thing that was very interesting that was happening is Lydia. So Lydia couldn't find that stupid flower thing for her date with therapy boy. Okay, she suddenly just walks into the woods barefoot. She sees something that kind of looks like an abandoned house, and she goes into it. She walks around the house, right, and suddenly this therapy guy, I don't even know if he has a name or if they even mention his name, so I have to keep calling him that, but he suddenly appears and he says that this abandoned house used to be his home. He asks for the flower, and then she says that she doesn't have it, and then they kiss. There's like some wardrobe, I think, with like a mirror on it, and it's facing Lydia. So as she's like kissing him, she suddenly opens her eyes and she sees that the young hottie that she thought she was kissing has turned into a burned Peter Hale. And like the house that she was in is actually Hale House, like the burnt Hale House. So she runs away screaming, or at least she tries to run away. What in the hell is going on? Lydia is just like seated on the floor after that with a burnt Peter next to her, apologizing, saying that it must be confusing and she's not like totally crazy. He says that her immunity is actually perfect for him, and she suddenly gets like flashes of like how when she was chasing that guy who she thought was creeping on her in the ladies' bathroom, and she saw like this man looking at the trophy case, that there was a picture inside the trophy case actually with the name Peter Hale, and in the picture it's actually the young hottie that she thought she saw when she was going for counseling. So all this time she was actually hallucinating this young hottie, like the one who was talking to her when she was waiting to see Miss Morel, the one who brought Prada back to her. It was a hallucination of young Peter Hale. In the present, after she goes through this whole situation, she realizes that burnt Peter actually isn't there, and then she suddenly has that stupid flower in her hand. The episode ends with the camera panning down to a buried Peter Hale. Yeah, he was buried under Hale House. Oh my god, episode 7 was a lot to unpack. Jackson gets a text one night, and he goes to this like ticket queue to get tickets for the rave, the same rave that Matt had invited Allison to on like Friday night. I don't know what they were on at this point, but he's in this like that zombified stoic kind of state. Matt is also in line. Scott, who I guess is trailing Jackson, watches Jackson from behind. Styles is having dinner with his dad in his office. He tells Styles that the mechanic, the couple, they were all about 24. What's the relation to Isaac's dad, right? But the sheriff also found out something interesting, and that is Isaac actually had an older brother, and he would have been 24 as well if he was still alive. He was actually killed in combat. So the idea strikes Styles that maybe they could have all been in the same class. So they rush out the yearbook, and whatever files of the school that the sheriff had, they looked at the class of 2006. Well, they all went to Beacon Hills, and they all actually had the same teacher as well, Adrian Harris. So they're thinking that the next victim must be someone from that class. As Scott is like observing Jackson, he also sees that Matt is in line. So he tries to borrow money from Matt to buy the tickets, but Matt's like, no. Jackson manages to get a ticket, but he like weirds the girl who's giving people these tickets. Like he weirds her out, creeped her out, and he like scratches her finger a little when he takes the tickets from her. I don't know what that was about, but because of her being creeped out, she shuts down the ticketing sales, and everybody else in the queue who hasn't gotten a ticket, like Matt and Scott, they just have to go. Chris and Allison go to the hospital morgue. They were probably let in by like some fellow hunter, and he shows her the body of the guy, the husband, a couple in the beginning of episode 7, how he was viciously attacked by the Kanema. Chris also tells Allison that the woman, however, the woman who was pregnant, she was smothered by a human. So he's also figured out that somebody's controlling the shapeshifter, the Kanema. He basically uses it as a lesson to Allison to tell her why they do this. So when he was younger, Chris also questioned Gerard as to why they must do this. Why should they be the ones to catch like the werewolves and all these other similar mystical things? Apparently, the Argent bloodline feel like since they know these things, they must help the people who don't and can't do anything about it. Those who can't help themselves. It seems like the only one who actually adheres to this is Chris, because like I feel like Kate and Gerard, like they just have their own agenda, you know. Chris and Gerard, since you know the Argents run the school now, they obviously saw the CCTV footage of what had happened in the library. Camera can't really catch much, and he knows that Allison was there that day, so he asks Allison what happened. Derek and Isaac show up at the animal clinic to meet Scott. Dr. Deaton is there as well. They lean on the theory that the Kanema can't swim, but at the same time, Jackson is actually captain of the swim team. So Dr. Deaton says that they could essentially be trying to catch two people, that the fear of the person who's controlling him, the fear of water, channels into the Kanema when the person is controlling the Kanema. So he thinks that if something were to affect the Kanema, it would affect the master as well. So that's how they're going to try and catch them. Scott feels like both master and Kanema are going to be at the rave because the Kanema is going to try and finish some kind of job since, you know, Jackson was in line to get tickets to the rave. So they try to get tickets from Danny because Danny actually has 2 tickets, but he didn't have his +1 yet. But then Isaac is like, y'all are amateurs, so he gets tickets from someone else by sheer brute force. I think I kind of like Isaac, even though he disappeared for a bit. Scott meets Allison in the chemistry lab, and she tells Scott what Chris knows about how there's someone controlling the Kanema. He in turn kind of tells her about that interaction he had with Victoria when they were sent to detention in the previous episode. So because of that, he feels like he and Allison should be seen with other people in public so that her mom's suspicion of them will be thrown off. Allison tells him about Matt and the rave and how it was like she didn't even realize that she had agreed to it, but Scott's like, good, you should go and you should maybe kiss him or something. But they kiss, and as they're kissing, Victoria actually sees this through the windows. Dr. Deaton gives Scott and Styles ketamine to slow the Kanema down. He also gives Styles a bottle of mountain ash so that Styles can create a barrier around the club so that no supernatural being can go in or out once the barrier is created. Chris, Gerard, and like hunters are getting their weapons ready in the basement of the Argent home, and Allison's just, you know, watching. Chris briefs the team, and they actually know that the Kanema is Jackson because Allison had told him. So Allison will signal Chris once she sees Jackson in the crowd when she's at the rave with Matt. So we're now at Friday night, the night of the rave. Allison is under the impression that they're just gonna catch Jackson, but when Allison leaves the room, Gerard says that the real intention is to kill Jackson. As Styles is leaving for the rave, the sheriff, he shares that he actually got fired, or not really fired, more of like a very, very, very long leave of absence because of the fact that Styles had that whole thing with Jackson, and then the whole, you know, stealing of the police vehicle to restrain Jackson in and all of that. Styles feels bad, obviously, but he still has to go to the rave to get things done. Isaac and Erica are there, and Matt and Allison show up together. Once she's at the rave, Allison, she sees Scott, so she goes up to Scott, and Matt sees her going up to Scott. Scott asks why Allison is there. She literally told him when they were making out in the chemistry lab that she was gonna go there with Matt. Scott says that they have a plan, they meaning like Derek and gang. What happened to Boyd anyway? Allison tells Scott that Chris and Gerard are coming, that she told them about Jackson being the Canema. Scott, he snaps and he tells Allison to stay out of the way. Rude. Styles starts to like spread the mountain ash. Scott tells Isaac to administer the shot into Jackson because he has to keep the Argents in check. A little inkling of friendship starts here when Scott tells Isaac to be careful. Isaac's like a little bit shook. Oh, the Argents show up and Derek and Boyd, wow, he's back. They bump into each other outside the club. Chris asks Derek to back off, but Derek just gives him sass. Then the Argents start shooting at Derek and Boyd, who have to like avoid it and all that. Derek gets tased. Oh my god, like PTSD to when Kate used her electrical tools against Derek in like every episode. But he's fine. Distracts like the stoic version of Jackson with Isaac, but they're not able to administer the shot because Jackson suddenly claws the both of them at the back of their necks, and this like distorted voice says she belongs to me. Isaac, however, manages to crawl his way to the ketamine shot and then he injects Jackson and then he faints. Styles manages to complete the barrier of mountain ash around the club. Scott goes outside because he's trying to find the Argents and to keep them in check, right? But then he gets knocked flat on his ass unconscious by Victoria Argent. She brings Scott to a room, which I'm assuming is somewhere in that. Okay, it's not really a club. I want to say it's like a warehouse. Yeah, like, I think it's a warehouse. It's a rave in some kind of warehouse. So she brings him into a room and she has like wolfsbane coming out of like a diffuser, and that's to like kill him slowly. Victoria had made some rather vicious plans because she planned to make it look like Scott had an asthma attack and then he couldn't get to his inhaler in time and then he dies. Styles meets Erica and Isaac in like a different part of the warehouse where the knocked out Jackson has been bound to a chair, and it's master, or like the person who's controlling the camera, talks to them through Jackson, but Jackson's still like, his eyes are closed, all that. He says that they're killing murderers, that they all murdered him. Then Jackson turns into the Kanema and he's like all fine again. He finds that lady who is selling the tickets in the beginning of the episode and he kills her. Within the club, Matt and Allison are like sort of dancing and they actually bump into Mr. Harris and like some girl who's a lot younger than him. Outside with the Argents, Boyd gets shot by like with some kind of wolfsbane bullet thing, so Derek asks him to go. Matt tries to kiss Allison. Derek actually runs into Styles, and at that moment he hears Scott growling and needing help, so he asks Styles to break the mountain ash circle. At first Styles refuses because he's like, hello, I put so much effort into making this circle. But then Derek has to urge Styles because he says that he can hear that Scott is dying because Scott is now a part of Derek's pack. Derek runs in to save Scott, but Victoria stabs him. And then they fight a little before Victoria runs away and Derek saves Scott. Gerard takes Allison away from the reef and he says that something good happened in a very ominous way. The sheriff, who, although he's not really a sheriff anymore, he shows up at the scene anyway, because the detectives on scene, they did him a favor and let him be there. And he says that this girl was not on the list. The list referring to the classmates from the class of 2006 yearbook, like the ones who were under Adrian Harris's class. Styles and his dad were looking at in the beginning of the episode. She's not a part of Adrian Harris's class, so her name wasn't on the sheriff's list. Dr. Deaton helps Scott, and Derek's in the room as well, recovering from his fight with all of the Argents, it seems. As Dr. Deaton leaves them to rest, he goes out to the waiting room of the clinic, and the counselor, the damn counselor. She's seated there and she asks Dr. Deaton if he's gonna leave it all up to the kids or if he's gonna tell them what's coming. What is happening? Look, I know Scott's like unconscious, but like can't Derek hear all this? Back in the warehouse area, Victoria, who ran away after her fight with Derek, she stumbles out and Chris is there. She calls out to him for help and we all see that she was bitten in the shoulder by Derek. Oh my god, what a plot twist at the end of episode 8. Episode 9. Lydia is like taking a bath, and then when she opens the shower curtains, she's suddenly in like a prom dress. She's standing in the middle of the lacrosse field. There are people, what do they call it, benches? I don't know. The seats, the spectator seats, they're all cheering for her, except for one woman, another PLL alumni, Melissa Hastings. She looks distressed. Peter comes and he like pushes her down. Lydia wakes up from this nightmare, but like Peter is still there. The full moon is coming up on Wednesday, which also happens to be Lydia's birthday, and Peter says it's the perfect time because it's like the last moon of winter or some shit. It's like some special moon. Lydia's immunity is gonna be the thing to like help him. And when she asks like what is she even immune to, he turns into a black wolf and then he attacks her. Back in the Argent home, Chris is helping Victoria clean the bite wound that she got from Derek. Gerard sees this and Chris tries to convince him that the wound is not that deep, but Gerard says that they have to do what they gotta do and that the bite came from an alpha. In Derek's house, he and Scott are in that train bus thing, which like why is it even there? How did it even get there? Was it there before? Did Derek steal it? And why do they use it? Yeah, anyway, they're in that thing. Derek tells Scott that he's never seen anything like the camera before. They can't save him, they can't kill him. Like what are they supposed to do? Every new moon he just keeps getting stronger. Scott says that maybe they should let the Argents handle it. Derek says that it's his fault because he's the one who bit Jackson. And Scott says he feels like Derek's keeping secrets from them, and then Derek says like he keeps secrets to protect them. What secrets? Like what secrets? What secrets are they even talking about? Allison is dropping Matt home after the rave. She tells him to just forget about the fact that he tried to kiss her, and then he asks Allison if like she and Scott are still together. Allison says not really, and that it's kind of complicated. Matt then like leaves the car to go into his house, but he left his backpack in the passenger seat. Allison sees this and she takes out his camera and she starts looking through the pictures that he's taken as like, is he even an official school photographer? I don't know, but yeah. She's looking through the photos when she obviously sees the 100,000 pictures that he has of her. On top of that, some of the pictures that she saw, it's not just like in school or at school events where he like zoomed in on her, but like through her bedroom window. Matt comes back and she passes him his camera and bag, and he has the audacity to bring the pictures up. He's like, oh, aren't they nice? And he even invites her into his room to have a look at the pictures. Oh my god, talk about being a perv. Ew. She tries to leave and then he gets all grossly stalkerish. It is so uncomfortable. Now, fast forward a little to Wednesday, which is the day of Lydia's birthday and the full moon. Derek is getting ready to help Boyd, Erica, and Isaac through the full moon change. So he takes out a box that has a symbol, the same one that he has tattooed on the back of his neck. Isaac asks what that is. Thank you, we also want to know. Boyd says that it's called a Triskel, I think, means alpha, beta, omega to Derek. Anyone can rise, anyone can fall. Isaac asks why Scott isn't with them right now, and Derek says it's because Scott is looking for Jackson. Lydia is at Allison's house and she showed up with like shopping bags, outfits that she's gonna wear for the party. Allison asks why Lydia didn't send party invites out. And Lydia says, well, everyone knows because Lydia's birthday party is like the biggest party of the year. Victoria tries to talk to Allison, but Allison dismisses her and says that they'll talk later. And when Victoria tries to ask, like, what time are you gonna be back? Allison's like, when I'm back, okay. Styles is at home and he's going through the yearbook again. The sheriff sees this and he tells Styles that Mr. Harris was brought in and they're currently working on getting a warrant to arrest him for the murders because his tire tracks match the tracks that were outside the couple that lives in a trailer. The car was also seen parked outside the hospital at the time where the pregnant woman, like after she gave birth, when she got murdered. Styles had recognized that Mr. Harris's car was also outside, parked outside the warehouse that the rave was in. Although he didn't see him inside, that was Matt and Allison, right? But Styles saw his car and he's able to identify the car because of this Einstein bumper sticker that he has. The rave promoter, that lady who was selling the tickets, that was the Kanema's recent victim, she was not a part of Mr. Harris's class. Styles needs to go and give a statement because he's a witness to seeing Harris's car outside the warehouse. But Styles says that something is missing. He feels like there's not enough evidence to say that it's Mr. Harris. He wants to solve the case so that he can help the sheriff get his job back. Suddenly, they notice the swim team picture and they see who's the coach. Isaac's dad. Lydia asks a stoic looking Jackson if he's going to attend her party, and when she touches him, he seems to like snap out of the state and go back to being himself. Jackson says that Lydia probably doesn't want him there. He knows it's a full moon, so he still thinks that he's gonna turn into a werewolf, but she insists that he attends the party anyway because she obviously doesn't know about this. It's now nighttime. Allison's walking up to Lydia's house for the party. Styles shows up with a gift, a massive gift that can't even fit through the front door. Scott is also there. Derek told Boyd Isaac and Erica that Scott was out looking for Jackson, but Lydia found him very easily in school. So what was Scott doing exactly? Styles says to Scott that they need to tell Allison what they figured out, tell Scott about the 2006 swim team thing. All the victims so far have been from the swim team, and the fact that the Kanema was scared to get into the pool. In episode 4, Allison's there and she says that Jackson's not around. There's actually nobody at the party, so Allison says they need to help Lydia. So Styles and Scott get people over. Derek, on the other hand, is chaining his 3 younglings up. He's gonna chain them inside the bus train thing, which now kind of makes sense as to why he has it, I guess. But yeah, he's gonna chain them up in there. Derek actually tightens this headband with spikes protruding inwards around Erica's head. Oh my god. Isaac asks Derek how he can even control himself. Derek says he can feel every minute of the full moon's effect, but the key here is to find an anchor, something to ground you, and for him, that's anger. Erica and Boyd are doing quite terribly, and Scott seems to be okay, but he's in a bit of a zesty, testy kind of mood because Allison and Scott are not talking, and Styles obviously notices this. So when he asks Scott if he's gonna apologize to Allison, he's like, what is there for me to even apologize for? Okay. Jackson eventually shows up and Lydia keeps trying to enforce punch to everyone. Turns out she has been spiking the punch with wolfsbane petals. Meanwhile, in the Argent house, Chris gives some kind of prescription pills to Victoria for her, but Victoria chooses a knife. Wow. Gerard tells Chris that he needs to be strong. He needs to basically help Allison get through this. Victoria goes up to Allison's room, which is where she wants to do that thing. She tells Chris that she didn't get a chance to talk to Allison and she wanted to do it in Allison's room so that she would feel closer to her. And she tries to self-inflict, but she can't do it herself, so Chris helps her. It's quite a disheartening scene. She even tells Chris to tell people that she had a history of depression and that Allison needs to be able to tell everyone the same thing, obviously, because they can't know the actual reason why. Over at Lydia's party, camera guy is there as well, and Allison's obviously avoiding him, but Matt and Allison, like, they eventually go to a room, I guess, to talk about it. And you know what this fool does? He basically asks her if taking these pictures of her because she's beautiful is like a crime. Yes, yes, it is. And she, like, confronts him about it, and she's like, how did you even get into certain positions to take pictures of her, like the one that where she's in a bedroom and things like that? He says that, oh, we use a telephoto lens or whatever, and Allison says the police would call it stalking. Exactly. He flips out on her, and then she tries to leave, but then he grabs her, so she pins him down using the hunter fighting skills that she has. Good, his ass deserves it. She runs out, and then she sees a hunter in the crowd, so she yells for Scott. But then she gets shot in the stomach by an arrow, and it's shot from a crossbow that's held by herself, who basically calls her pathetic, and then she vanishes. Scott says he feels weird because he drank the punch too, and Styles, he sees his, like, a drunk version of his dad, and he's blaming Styles for the death of his mom. Scott has this hallucination or like vision of Allison and Jackson getting it on, but he realizes that Lydia has something to do with it. Jackson, meanwhile, sees like faceless parents talking to him, and while all this is happening, Lydia leaves her own party. I gotta say, I'm not really living for possessed Lydia. Derek is struggling to handle the three wolves by himself, and he tries to call Scott, but Scott's a little occupied right now. The three fools actually break free and they all attack Derek. Isaac, however, manages to find his anchor, so he helps Derek constrain Boyd and Erica. His anchor is his dad before he became this cruel version, because according to Isaac, he wasn't always like that. Also, he looks really funny as a werewolf. I don't know. I just feel like he looks funny. Don't know where Boyd, Erica, and Isaac go, but Lydia somehow shows up at Derek's home, which, like, how did she even know where to go? She blows this purple powder in his face, which knocks him out. I'm guessing that's Wolfsbane. Allison gets to the hospital shortly after, that whole hallucination thing. She snaps out of it, she leaves, and she goes to the hospital where, Chris is there and Victoria is in the morgue. Scott and Styles are trying to find Lydia, but they can't. The party's still going on. Somebody pushes Matt into the pool, and we find out that Matt actually can't swim. And as Matt is drowning and calling for help, nobody's helping him. Scott and Styles just watch him drown. Jackson's the one who pulls him out, and Scott and Styles see this, obviously. The cops come and the party ends outside Lydia's house, which where are her parents anyway? But outside her house, Scott sees the camera wrapped around Matt before they disappear. Lydia drags Derek to Hill House, where the floorboards have been ripped up. Again, where is Isaac, Erica, and Boyd? Lydia puts Derek's arm near the hole where she ripped the floorboards off of, and that's also the site where Peter was buried. And somehow Peter is able to bite into Derek's arm, and then what do you know? He's back. We see a little flashback. So remember when Jackson borrowed Matt's camera to document history? Well, Matt, he got a little bit suspicious of what Jackson was gonna film. So in his car, he connected to his camera wirelessly, and he saw Jackson turning into the camera. What a pervert. And basically, in that episode where Jackson turns into the Canema in Scott's house, the episode where they all find out that Jackson's the Canema, when the Canema goes up to that car and he was putting his hand, and there was this figure who was putting a gloved hand back, that was Matt, and he was able to see that the Canema killed Isaac's dad in episode 2. Styles and Scott try to tell the sheriff that it's Matt, but the sheriff doesn't get the connection because of the fact that rave promoter who was murdered, she wasn't in Mr. Harris's class, right? Although I thought we established the fact that Styles found out from the yearbook that it's everyone from the swim team. Scott urges for the sheriff to believe them, but the sheriff says that he's suspended, so they can't look at the evidence anyway. But they still go to the precinct, and thanks to the sheriff's influence and pull, the woman who's manning the counter, the police officer, lets them through. So they want to look at things related to the school first and also the hospital, because it's the only one where the woman was murdered by the master who's controlling the Kanema, who we now know as Matt. But they need to prove it, right? So the three of them look through the CCTV footage in the hospital. Scott and Styles, they spot what they are sure of is Matt's back, and they see him talking to Melissa. So Scott calls Melissa, but she's a nurse. I mean, she sees so many people in a day, right? How is she supposed to remember something like that? Random thought, but like, if Mr. Harris is like a suspect for these murders, did Scott like pass his chemistry test or not? Anyway, Scott sends a picture of that still from the CCTV footage to Melissa. She says that she does remember him because he was actually tracking mud into the hallway. The sheriff says that there were footprints at the scene of the crime, the trailer, and that if they can put Matt in the trailer, they have him down. And it would put him in 4 scenes. So the trailer, the hospital, the rave, and the sheriff actually found a receipt signed by Matt at the mechanic's garage. The sheriff says that that's enough for a warrant. So Scott asks Melissa to come down and to give an official witness statement. Styles goes to the front desk, but the police officer who let them in is murdered. Matt is there and he points a gun at Styles. Number one, how did they even know where they are? I don't know. Number two, this is giving like deja vu to season 1 when Scott's heightened senses are of no help. So remember when Derek got taken down by Lydia and the whole Peter revival thing happened? Yeah, someone saves him, and that someone is Dr. Deaton. He is so mysterious. Okay, what is his deal? Anyway, he says that Derek is still an alpha. Just because Peter clawed him doesn't mean he's alpha again. He also can't tell Derek where Peter is. I don't know if he doesn't know or if he just didn't want to, but we find out that Dr. Deaton actually made a promise to Derek's mom to take care of him. Dr. Deaton actually used to help the Hale family a lot. Help with what? I don't know. And then Derek's like, oh yeah, my sister told me we had an advisor. Was he like never curious about who this advisor was? An advisor to what? Advise what? Dr. Deaton just tells Derek that Peter is very weak now and he's probably gonna try and get to Derek in his manipulative ways, which we know Peter is fantastic at. It's quite a skill. He also says that he's gonna need Scott's help for when Peter tries to do this. And then he says that he's known Gerard for a long time, that he always has a plan. Back in the police station, Matt marches Styles back into the room where the sheriff and Scott are in, and Scott's so surprised, oh my god, that Matt is there. Did he not hear the gun? Did he not smell Matt? Did he not hear their conversation? Matt asks all of them to surrender their cell phones, and like Scott's secretly trying to text someone while like his phone was in his pocket, but like Matt sees it. And also, like, who is Scott texting? Because like you're in a police station, right? The ex-sheriff is right there. I don't know who he was texting. How do you even know who he's texting? They all go to the holding cells together where Matt handcuffs the sheriff to like a rail outside the holding cells, and then Matt, Scott, and Styles are like walking back somewhere, and they see that all the cops who were in the station actually get murdered by the Kanema. So apparently the relationship between Matt and the Kanema is now at a point where as long as Matt just thinks kill this person, the Kanema will do it. They, I guess, don't even have to be a murder anymore, just what the Kanema law is supposed to be. Matt gets Scott and Styles to destroy all the evidence that they have, and while they're doing that, they hear a car pull up, so they think that shit, it's Melissa, but actually it's Derek, who, when the door opens, he just falls over because he got nicked by the Kanema. You'd think Derek would be a little bit wiser now, but I guess not. I also feel bad because I feel like Derek just has not caught a break at all since like season 1. Matt says that he knows that Derek is a werewolf and he knows about the hunters as well. Styles gets all sarcastic, which earns him a nick from the camera, so he falls on top of Derek. Fate loves them, and so do I. Oh yeah, Matt also knows that Scott is a werewolf. I don't think he got this information from the bestiary, because when Allison gave Styles and Scott like the translated bestiary courtesy of Lydia, it was only about the Kanema. I'm pretty sure that Matt was able to know this information because he's connected to Jackson that way, and Jackson obviously knows about the hunters, he knows about Derek and Scott and all that. Melissa finally arrives at the police station, and she's like another victim of Matt. He tells her that he won't hurt Scott if Melissa does what he says, but then he shoots Scott in the torso, and obviously Melissa panics, and Matt taunts Scott about the fact that Melissa doesn't even know anything about what's gonna happen, and the fact that Scott is obviously going to survive that shot. He doesn't let Melissa help because he knows that Scott's going to be fine, and he throws her into a holding cell where the sheriff is being handcuffed. They are then in a different room, like Scott and Matt, and he asks what we're all thinking. The evidence is already destroyed, so like, why are you still here? Matt says he wants to be bestiary because he then lifts his shirt up, and we see the same scales that we can see on the camera starting to form on his side. So he wants some answers that he's sure the bestiary would have. Meanwhile, in the Argent house, Gerard is like comforting Allison, not really, over Victoria's death. He says that he has a gift from Victoria, that she wrote a letter to the police explaining like her self-exit, but that she wrote a separate letter just for Allison. Allison has to burn the letter after reading it. Gerard just manipulates the hell out of his granddaughter because he said that he read it and he said that her words are full of love, and that if it was him, he wouldn't be able to sit still until someone paid the price for her death. And he mentions Derek and Derek's pack, about how they're responsible for it. He hands her the letter and he leaves, but his manipulation has worked because Allison reads the letter and then she burns it, and she gets this fit of anger. She trashes everything in her room and then she gets gun out. Allison goes and shows Chris about a text that she got from Scott asking about the bestiary, saying that Derek knows about it, but she tells Chris that she knows it's not Scott because Scott has not texted her since Chris and Victoria said that they cannot be together, and he would never text her. Gerard is also present when Allison tells Chris this, so they do figure out that the Kanema and Matt must be wherever Scott is. Gerard asks Allison to take over the leadership role because if you remember, when Chris was explaining to Allison earlier on in the season, the women of the Argent family, they're the ones who control things and lead everyone. Chris protests because Allison is, number one, not trained, and number two, obviously in a very emotionally fragile state because her mom just died. But Gerard knows what he's doing, of course, because Allison just says that she wants Derek dead. Back in the police precinct, in whichever room Styles and Derek are in, still paralyzed, Styles asks Derek if he knows what's happening to Matt. Why is he getting these skills, right? And Derek says that the cannibal was only supposed to be used as a tool to hunt murderers. Because Matt broke this code, he's becoming a cannibal himself. Derek manages to claw himself to trigger the healing process a lot faster. Scott also manages to get the story, like why he's doing this, or why did he use the cannibal to kill all those people. So Isaac's dad was a coach for the swim team. They had won some kind of championship, and they were all back in Isaac's house celebrating the win with drinks, even though they're all very underage. Matt was over at the house because he wanted to make like a comic book trade with Isaac at the time. He mentions the names of all the people who were there, aka the people that he killed. Isaac's brother actually threw Matt in the pool just for lols, but Matt can't swim, and nobody was helping him as he drowned. When he regained consciousness, because Isaac's dad pulled him out from the pool, he just threatened, like the asshole that he is, that Matt cannot tell anyone about this, that this never happened. And so he never told anyone about it, and all the people from the swim team just never mentioned it either. I guess Isaac doesn't know this though, obviously, because if not, he would have been able to figure it out from one of the earlier episodes, and we wouldn't have a 12th episode show until it got to this point. Okay, it's quite a sad backstory, I'll give him that. During Kate's funeral, when he was there taking pictures of Allison, which he conveniently didn't mention to Scott, he was looking back at the pictures that he took, and he saw one that had Isaac's dad in the background. So when he saw that, he got furious and all he felt was like he wanted him dead. And the next day, Isaac's dad was really dead. So he started taking more pictures. Suddenly, the lights go off and the alarm starts blaring. Hunters start shooting up the place from outside. Scott takes Styles with him and runs. Kanema goes after them. Chris and Allison enter the police station. Derek is a werewolf. He's like totally fine now. Scott bumps into Allison and he's confused. And she asks him where Derek is, and he's even more confused. Allison just tells Scott to stay out of her way, and she like runs off somewhere. Chris gets knocked out by the Kanema. Allison actually manages a hit shot with a bow, but it does nothing to the Kanema. She also tries to stab it multiple times. What a baddie, but it doesn't work. And then she gets nicked by the Kanema. Chris gets Allison out. The sheriff manages to break the rail of the wall. Oh my god, what a man. Just as Styles like crawls into where the holding cells are, Matt knocks the sheriff out with a gun to his head. Melissa's like trying to plead with Matt. You know, she still thinks that Scott is dying. But then Derek in his werewolf form comes in and she sees that. Derek and the Kanema start fighting. Matt leaves. And the Kanema like jumps onto the holding cell and it's like hissing, screeching at Melissa, and then Scott tears him off from that, and then Melissa sees that Scott is a werewolf. Scott runs out and he sees Gerard. He's like, why are you here? Scott says that he's already doing everything that Gerard wants. He joined Derek's pack for Gerard. He's been feeding him information. He told Gerard about Matt. When did he have... Maybe that's who he was trying to text. I don't know. Gerard tells Scott to take his friends and go to leave Matt and the Kanema to him. So Scott goes and, you know, Gerard like drops his pill box or whatever, and then like Scott just returns it to him. He goes and like Derek overheard everything. Matt actually gets caught by Gerard as he's running away from the police station. I don't know what Matt was hoping to do. It's like everyone knows who you are now. You killed the cops and the sheriff will obviously remember who you are. Well, he may be suspended, but who wouldn't believe the sheriff, you know? Anyway, Gerard drags Matt to like some creek or river or whatever that is, and then drowns him with his bare hands. Can you see cold-blooded? Oh my god. Like Peter, remember Peter Hale? He's totally fine now, by the way. He's back to normal. He witnesses this whole thing and he sees how the Kanema is now under Gerard's control. So that was Gerard's endgame the whole time, it would seem. Episode 11 starts with Styles talking to Miss Morel, the counselor, about how Matt drowned. The sheriff found the pictures that Matt took of Allison. Apparently he photoshopped himself into a lot of them. Oh my god, it's his Tumblr girl era. He like built a whole fake relationship and everything with Allison. The sheriff got reinstated. Good for him. Scott and Styles haven't really talked since the incident that happened at the police station. Melissa and Scott have also not talked. She is avoiding him. Allison is working with Chris now. I guess Gerard by default. Okay, I would say it's more like Allison's working with Gerard and Chris is just there. There's gonna be like a championship game the next day. Erica and Boyd have been considered runaways. I don't like this style of revealing information, you know, when like two characters are just talking about something and then they release a bunch of information that seems rather important. Back in the McCall house, while Scott was taking like a shower, the Kanema and Gerard broke in and the Kanema is holding Melissa by the neck as Gerard threatens Scott. Gerard wants Scott to deliver Derek and his pack. Gerard said he came to Beacon Hills one thought in mind, and that is to avenge Kate's death, which is why he's able to control the Kanema, because Kanema is a weapon of vengeance. The runaways that I mentioned, Boyd and Erica, they're like walking around in the woods when they suddenly hear a series of howls. So they get back to Derek and they say that they want to leave his pack. Derek says it's a bad idea because, you know, what happens to wolves who don't have packs? And they said they think they found another one, so like goodbye. Basically, they just don't want to get murdered by the hunters, which is very valid in my opinion. Scott is at work. Wow, didn't know he was still doing that gig, but yeah, he's still working part-time at the animal clinic, and he and Dr. Deaton are treating this dog when Isaac comes in. Isaac's allowed in to treatment room with Scott and Dr. Deaton, and something very interesting happens. So Isaac's able to smell some kind of stench that's coming from this dog, and that's when Dr. Deaton reveals that yes, werewolves actually have this ability to tell whether someone is getting better or not. Also find out that they have this ability. Okay, so Dr. Deaton puts Isaac's hand on the dog. His veins on his hand like start to turn black a little and it travels up. Turns out that they can take away some of the pain if someone is hurting and actually provides a little bit of relief. Isaac gets quite happy about it, so that's kind of nice. Bless him. Isaac tells Scott that Boyd and Erica are leaving, and he asks Scott for advice basically because he feels like Scott always does the right thing, or at least he tries to do the right thing all the time. Scott just tells him to do like what he wants to do basically, and Isaac also drops in a little sprinkle of information that Jackson was actually at lacrosse practice as if nothing had happened. Because like Scott didn't know that because Scott didn't go to practice, dealing with this situation. So he's pretty shook, and that means he's definitely going to go and play in the lacrosse championship game, the finals, whatever you call it, because Jackson's always going to be there. And then Isaac comes to the decision that he's going to leave with Boyd and Erica. Peter shows up at Derek's. Peter says he wants to help Derek, and then Derek beats him up. It's now the evening of the game, I want to say, and Danny is asking Jackson if he's alright. Scott overhears this, and he also gets benched because of the fact that he's failing 3 classes. Before the game starts, Scott and Styles, they have a little debrief, I guess. Okay, like Styles just tells Scott about the fact that he felt helpless seeing Matt knock his dad out like that when, during the whole police station thing that was happening in episode 10. The sheriff and Melissa are sitting together watching the game when Styles gets put into the game, and then he gets so happy. Oh my god, it's so cute. And the sheriff gets so happy and excited. Such a sweet moment. Back at Derek's home, Peter is great at manipulation, I tell you, because he manages to get Derek to stop hitting him. Peter says that Derek needs a pack and that he can join, and also that he doesn't hold any grudges over Derek killing him in season 1. And he also tells Derek that he knows how to save Jackson. Peter says that you can reach Jackson through his heart, and that Lydia is the one who is going to be able to do it. Isaac shows up. I think he's my new favorite character. He wants to help Scott instead of running away. They kind of devise a plan to put Scott into the game because Gerard actually tells Scott that he has until the last 30 seconds of the game to give him Derek and his pack. If not, someone's gonna get offed by the Kanema. So Scott tells Isaac this, and they come up with a plan to get Scott into the game. So when Isaac is playing, he knocks out the substitutes until there's nobody left except Scott. So the coach has no choice but to let Scott play. On the Argent side of things, Chris and Allison are in some kind of, what is that, ATV? Right around the woods of Beacon Hills. And so that series of wolf howls that Boyd and Erica had heard in the beginning of the episode, it was actually just a recording being played by the Argents. So Boyd and Erica essentially are screwed. They try to run. They try to hide. But it doesn't work because Chris is very experienced and Allison has revenge in her eyes, and Boyd and Erica are terrible werewolves, okay? Allison catches up to them. She shoots Erica in the leg with her arrows, and Erica tells Boyd to run, but he doesn't want to. He wants to help Erica. But Allison, she has no mercy because she shoots Boyd over and over and over and over and over again. Erica tries to plead with Allison, but girl does not care. I mean, to be fair, she did get manipulated by her grandfather, who said that Derek and gang were the ones who caused her mother to, be in that situation. Chris is the one who has to stop her, so he shoots her bow, breaks it so she can't continue to hurt them. And he actually confronts her about the fact that she almost killed them. They were supposed to catch, not kill. But Allison doesn't care. She leaves Gerard a voicemail asking him to call her back. Chris says that this is not how they do things, right? But Allison just dismisses him. So Chris is quite provoked about the fact that Allison is becoming like Gerard, or is leaning towards Gerard. So when the Kanema and Gerard were in Scott's home threatening Melissa's life, she was mostly afraid, so she told Scott to basically just do whatever Gerard wants. But during the lacrosse game, she could tell that something was up. So she pulls Scott aside and she tells him to not listen to her and to do whatever he can to help. There's the Queen Melissa that I know. Oh yeah, Gerard also offered his granddaughter like a prize to Scott if Scott were to deliver Derek and his back to him. Isaac gets nicked by the Kanema, so he gets paralyzed, brought back into the school, healing bay, whatever. A bunch of the substitutes were actually brought there, but it seems like Isaac was alone because Gerard corners him and tries to kill Isaac, but Scott comes to the rescue. So he just leaves the game and comes to rescue. Styles actually scores his first goal in this game. Good for him. Okay, he basically becomes a hero because he scores goal after goal and he wins the whole game for them. After helping Isaac, Gerard just leaves and Scott runs back to the pitch. The whistle's blown, the game is over, Beacon Hill's won thanks to Styles. Saxon starts to turn into the Kanema and all the lights go off. There's chaos everywhere, people screaming, running. Melissa and Scott manage to find each other, and then the lights come back on and Jackson's down on the ground. He clawed himself and he's unconscious. So Melissa tries to save him with CPR. By the way, Lydia attended this game as if nothing happened. She's totally fine. She was just watching the game like a normal spectator, it seems. As all the attention is on Jackson and Melissa's trying to save him, the sheriff notices that Styles is gone. He's missing. Oh my god, we are finally in the season finale, episode 12. Okay, so Jackson's ambulanced away. We don't know what is the status of his medical condition. And Melissa just gets into the ambulance and goes with him. I mean, she's a nurse, right? Styles gets thrown into some basement and then he sees Boyd and Erica tied up with electrical charges hooked onto them when he switches on the light, so safe to say he's at the Argent house. Sheriff tells Scott and Isaac, who's now okay, he has to go to the hospital because he needs to speak to the ME about Jackson. He basically asks that if they hear anything from Styles, to just let him know. He put an APB out on Styles and his Jeep is actually still in the parking lot. Scott and Isaac get to the locker room, they break open Styles' locker and they get the clothes out, so they're going to try and find him by scent. Derek and Peter actually show up right then, saying that they need to talk. Oh yeah, Scott doesn't know that Peter was revived. I forgot about that. And also Isaac has no idea who he is. I guess Dr. Deaton didn't tell Scott about Peter being revived, huh? And yeah, he probably didn't tell Scott about the fact that he was the advisor to the Hale family either. Derek says that he knows that Scott was helping Gerard, but Scott said that he had no choice because Gerard was threatening Melissa. Remember that threat he made after Scott went to the Argents for dinner and then he went to pick Melissa up and then Gerard threatened him with the knife by stabbing him outside the hospital. Yeah, that threat. Derek and Peter tell Scott that basically they can help Jackson, but Scott says that's impossible because Jackson's dead. That is not the impression that we were given when he was ambulanced away. Peter says that Gerard must have wanted Jackson dead for a reason. So I guess Peter must have told Derek about what he saw at the end of episode 10 when Gerard and the Kanema connected, because no one seems surprised that Peter is so well informed of the situation. Meanwhile, in the Argent house, Styles is trying to help Boyd and Erica, but because of the electricity that's running through them, he can't. Then Gerard comes down. Styles says with a lot of confidence that Scott is going to find him with his scent. Well, Scott didn't find Lydia at the beginning of the season with just a scent, did he? Well, Gerard doesn't really care and he just starts beating Styles up. He's quite spry for an old man, I will say. Upstairs of the Argent house, once Gerard is done with Styles, he and Allison are talking about something with each other and Chris walks in on these hushed conversations. Chris asks what happened at the game and what happened to Jackson, but Gerard says they won and that's it. Chris asks Allison to stand down, but she doesn't want to. She just wants Derek dead. She says that Derek is also to blame for Jackson's death. I mean, Chris is obviously a good guy, you know, he had that moral code all the way from season 1. He didn't agree with Kate's notion. He obviously doesn't want Allison to follow that style of thinking, doesn't want her to follow Gerard, but she's too blinded because of the fact that her mom just died, which is also like valid. So basically Gerard is to blame for everything. And as for Styles, he was just let free by Gerard and he goes home, the sheriff is there, they embrace, and he just plays it off like the opposing team like beat him up because of the fact that he was gloating or whatever, and he convinces the sheriff to drop it. In Hill House, Peter actually pulls out a laptop from under the stairs. He transferred like the Hale family records, something like their version of a bestiary, into the laptop. I guess when he got out of the coma, like in season 1, or I guess before season 1, they want to search up like the lore of the Kanema. If Gerard wanted Jackson dead, it means there must be something coming, right? But at the same moment, like Melissa calls Scott because she went to the morgue that Jackson was put in, and she opened the body bag and Jackson is covered. He's in his human form now, and he's covered in like a goo. It's like encasing him like a protective shell, like a cocoon. So Scott and Isaac go down, and like on top of Jackson being covered in this goo, he starts to like move a little bit. It's so gross. Oh my god. They're like on the phone with Derek and Peter, and they're like trying to figure out what's happening. As he starts to move more and more, the very mighty wolf, or wolves, because both him and Isaac are wolves, asks his mummy to be the one to zip the bag up. Lydia goes to visit Styles. She doesn't congratulate him, she barely mentions the bruises. She was basically there to just talk about Jackson, about the fact that the hospital wouldn't let her see him. See, here's the thing. Does everyone think that Jackson is dead? When I say everyone, I mean the people of Beacon Hill, like his parents, Lydia, the sheriff, like people in general who don't know about the supernatural world that is happening around them. Like, are they under the impression that Jackson's dead? Lydia tells Styles that he has like 17 messages from Scott, who at this point knows that he's okay, I think, because the sheriff probably informed him. And Sal says that he knows, but he just doesn't want to reply. Maybe he's mad that Scott didn't find him sooner, I don't know. To be fair, Scott didn't even embark on the search, okay? He just immediately followed Derek and Peter to Hill House. I guess she has zero memories of reviving Peter, huh? And like Derek doesn't even mention it to anyone, cause like he recognized her before she blew like Wolfsbane in his face. She also finds like all the gifts that Styles bought for her because he couldn't decide like what to give her, and that he was gonna, you know, return some stuff. It's just basically another scene of the one-sided love between them. So Peter finds something about the Kanema. Apparently the form that the Kanema was in before was like its beta shape, whatever that means, and that now it's gonna transform into something bigger and better with wings, according to an animation that Derek and Peter find. He asks Scott to bring it to them, but the body is like moving a lot. So Derek and Peter says that they'll just meet them halfway, just get him out of the hospital before he becomes that big bad thing. Peter says that they need Lydia, but Derek just wants to kill Jackson for like the 100th time. Gerard wakes Allison up. I guess he can feel like Jackson's transformation happening or something, because he tells her it's time. And our other Argent, Chris, he actually shows up when Scott and Isaac are like trying to transport Jackson's body out of the hospital. He stops them and he says that they have a common enemy. He basically tells Scott that Gerard is getting into Allison's mind the way that he did with Kate. He doesn't want Allison to become like that. So he helps Scott and Isaac. I don't think I've ever mentioned it before, but Chris is actually one of my favorite characters as well. I think for a lot of the characters, like for me, it fluctuates in different seasons. I have a preference for different characters, but the one constant who I like in every season is actually Chris. Lydia shows Styles something on her phone. I have no idea what it is, and they don't show it to us either. But it prompts Style to ask Lydia how much does she know about everything that's happening. She says like, bits and pieces. But then he like flips out on her when she says she wanna help. I don't know what that whole thing was about, honestly. The scene was just weird, okay? And like, again, is nobody gonna mention about the fact that Lydia revived Peter? Lydia says, yeah, it's fine. She's just gonna find him alone. Who is him? Who the hell is him? Okay, whoever him is, she's just gonna find him herself, okay? So she leaves, and like the sheriff asks if like, there's like a thing happening, and then Styles says no, she's like still in love with someone else, aka Jackson. And then, the sheriff like tries to cheer him up and compliments him about the game. Yeah, thank you. Nobody has actually celebrated Styles yet for winning the game. Can't believe this is still happening at the same night, but yeah. Chris, Scott, and Isaac bring Jackson into like some alley that's behind warehouses. Eric reveals himself, but Peter hides. So Scott asks, where is Peter and where is Lydia? But maybe Peter is the one who texted Lydia. It's so weird, okay? It's so weird. I don't know what's happening at this point. Or maybe I was just so done with this whole season that I just glazed through. So yeah, we all know Derek says that he wants to kill Jackson because he's become like Gerard's like personal guard dog. But Chris says that if Jackson's a dog and he's turning rabbit, it's not Gerard's nature to let him live. Gerard, our main man, enters and he agrees with Chris. Camera rises, claws Derek, throws him off somewhere. This is a recurring scene, I feel. Allison comes in, shoots Isaac with an arrow. Poor man, he didn't even do anything. Chris tries to shoot the Kanema with a gun, but it ain't working. Derek, Scott, and Isaac fight the Kanema together as werewolves. Peter's just watching this whole thing, he's obviously up to something else. And our three werewolf boys are not doing so well in the fight against the Kanema, who, by the way, does not look bigger or better or has wings at all. It looks exactly the same. Allison has fantastic knife skills all of a sudden and does brilliant job on Isaac. Look, I love Isaac now, but Allison's pretty cool. Then when Isaac is down, she sees Derek, so she goes up to him. The Kanema holds Allison back by her neck, as Gerard says, not yet. Scott announces to the world that Gerard came to do what he wanted to do in the first place. What is the thing that he wanted to do? Well, Gerard says that Scott could tell from when he threatened him outside the hospital with the knife. And I want to say episode 4. Gerard is dying from cancer, and science has not advanced far enough to save him, but the supernatural world can. Gerard also lets out a brutal line. He says that he would kill his own son if it meant his own survival. Okay, please. Right to Chris's face. Ice cold, man, this guy. Gerard gives Scott the cue to bring Derek to him, and he just publicly reveals to everyone that Scott would do anything if it meant that he'll get Allison as the end goal, like she's some kind of prize to be won in a carnival, huh? With the help of Scott, Gerard gets a bite from Derek, but black blood starts coming out of his bite wound. And then Scott says that everyone says Gerard always has a plan, so I had my own plan too. Basically, he and Dr. Dejan replaced Gerard's pills with mountain ash. So back in the police station in episode 10, when Scott gave him the pills that Gerard supposedly dropped, yeah, it was the dupe pills, not whatever like medication that Gerard actually needed. Gerard bleeds from all of his orifices. It's giving disgustingness from Jackson's era of doing that, and in his dying state asks the Kanema to kill everyone. But then Styles and Lydia come crashing in his jeep, knocking the Kanema on its ass. Lydia comes out, shows the Kanema the house key, like Jackson's house key that she had worn as a necklace, and then he has like memories of the night of when he gave that house key to Lydia, and then the camera like magically turns back into Jackson, and then Peter comes out of nowhere, and so does Derek, and then they both stab Jackson, who dies in Lydia's arms just as she says that she still loves him. Oh my god, what in the Romeo and Juliet is this? Gerard somehow escapes. What the hell? Was nobody keeping an eye on him? But then, like, Jackson suddenly wakes up as a werewolf and then he's like blue eyes, whatever that means. Like how Derek had blue eyes in season 1. So like how are they gonna explain Jackson's non-death? And then I guess like everything's fine now. So like Scott and Allison are sitting in a room. They talk a little bit and she breaks up with him, but he's like, I'll wait for you. And yeah. She of course apologizes. I mean, it's not your fault, girl. Boyd and Erica, oh my god, I completely forgot about them. I guess they were freed at some point. They're running in the woods again when like a couple of werewolves show up and like surround them. Gets a little more in the next season. Dr. Deaton and the damn counselor, Miss Morrell, they're like outside the warehouse, which this whole showdown in episode 12 happened. And they're like following this trail of black blood that was left by Gerard. And then the counselor says that she didn't like it when Dr. Deaton retired, and he's like, who said I retired? And like, what the hell are they talking about? No idea. Derek, Peter, and Isaac go to Hill House. Yes, the burnt down one in the woods. Peter asks if Derek told Isaac everything, like why was he such in a rush to create a pack after he became an alpha. Derek says that people take notice when you become an alpha, especially if you're new. They see that there's this massive symbol that was carved into the front door of Hale House. Apparently there's an alpha pack that's already there. And then the season ends. A lot of mystery and build-up and unanswered questions and ongoing plots that I guess will be revealed in season 3. Okay, here's a recap of like everything that has happened in season 2, like the characters, the main ones anyway. Scott, I think he's learning about himself and he's stepping into this new role where he wants to use his abilities for good, like that righteous type, you know. Now that Melissa knows about Scott being a werewolf, I guess he'll be able to deepen his relationship with his mom. I would say that she's quite supportive of him, so I think it'll be nice to see that relationship blooming. He's not with Allison anymore, but he obviously still cares for her. He pretty much saved the day after being manipulated by Gerard for like most of the season. Found a new unexpected alliance with Chris. Good for him. I think that all the characters are supposed to see Scott as this pillar of goodness. And deep down, they all know that Scott always just wants to do the right thing. Styles is the perfect friend. He complements Scott very well, I think, as a duo. He provides equal value. I think the character of Styles brings a lot of insight. He became a lacrosse hero, bonded with his dad a lot more, and his relationship with Lydia is still non-existent. Yeah, I'm really still not into the trope at all. Allison, for me, felt like she was just there in the beginning of the season. Like, I don't think anything very interesting happened to her. I mean, she was helping them out and she was very helpful, and she was also able to accept Scott's wolfliness very easily. In the second half, you know, when Victoria, Icon, left, yeah, things got quite hard for her. She was terribly manipulated by Gerard and would have probably killed Boyd if like Kristen had stepped in. She and her dad are probably gonna have a lot of healing, but I think it's gonna bring their relationship with each other a lot closer. I think he's gonna teach her like the proper way to do things, the code, how he views his role as a hunter as well. Derek is packless, but like also not really. Like he lost Boyd and Erica, but like I think Isaac's probably still part of his pack, and like Peter maybe. I feel like Derek is probably gonna become a main target again in season 3, what with the whole alpha pack thing. Peter is back, but I doubt that he's suddenly a good person despite being revived for like what, the second time. Erica and Boyd are somewhere, and like Isaac is my new favorite character. Lydia suddenly seemed okay after her hallucination era. I am so over it. Like, just release her potential already, okay? The fact that nobody even mentioned that she revived Peter is just bugging me. She does technically also save the day by saving Jackson, so good for her. Speaking of Jackson, wow, okay, he like went through a lot. He became everyone's pawn this season, I think. But like he finally got what he wanted and that's become a werewolf. How did they explain his dead, non-dead? Because like, you know, he was wheeled off in front of everyone. And like, yeah, even though Melissa went along, but it's like witnesses, documentation. So like, how did they explain this? Our antagonists, Matt, the perverted creep, he was killed by Gerard quite brutally, and Gerard was sort of poisoned maybe by Scott, yet that tough old man manages to sneak away without anyone noticing. He's a survivor, I tell you. Honorable mention to Dr. Deaton and the counselor, okay. There are ambiguous statements that suddenly appeared throughout the season, peppered here and there in the later episodes. Like, you know, the fact that they knew everything or like they knew something deeper than what was being shown at face level. Something about what's coming, but it's not here yet. But then they also never say what it is, so all their statements are pretty much meaningless to us at this point. I think season 2 had a lot going on. Okay, it was the same number of episodes as season 1, but I just felt like it was never ending. This video is so long. I've been talking and talking and talking. My background has changed 10,000 times. This is worse than season 1. It's just going on forever. But I do enjoy the plot. I did enjoy the plot of season 2. I think that a lot of things were happening. The element of mystery was there in terms of Jackson's, the Canima's master. Like, okay, we knew the Canima was Jackson. It's pretty damn obvious. But nobody would have expected Matt, random ass guy, would be the master. I thought it was Gerard at first. I mean, it eventually became Gerard, right? But I thought that the first master was Gerard. For me, the most unexpected thing that happened in season 2 was Peter coming back and that whole thing with Lydia. Pretty decent plot. I enjoy every season and I like who was portrayed as the antagonists and the main like theme of everything that was gonna go on. I actually did enjoy Teen Wolf a lot, which is why I watched it very religiously back then. I think it's just now watching it back, you have all these questions and all these plot holes that we find in certain unexplained things. So we'll see if our questions from season 2 are going to be answered in season 3 or not. But for now, my teacup is empty and that means our Kiki has come to an end. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm always very grateful that you took the time to listen to my yapping. If you want to yap with me, you can always leave a comment. And you know, I probably got a lot of things confused in this season, not gonna lie. I was not really mentally present when I was doing up my notes because at one point I got a bit tired of Teen Wolf. So if I missed anything or if there's anything that I didn't explain properly, please feel free to leave a comment about it. I hope to see you in the next video and I hope that you have a gorgeous day. Bye!